With the Demon King destroyed, I comforted her, suggesting she find a new purpose, perhaps becoming a virtuous wife. She blushed and whispered in agreement. I then traveled to another city with her, using shadow mist to mask our presence. We arrived at a modest apartment, and I used space magic to bypass the door, entering a bedroom where Zi Qiangwei lay sleeping in a gaming pod. It was my first time seeing the famous guild leader in person. Her beauty was no exaggeration. Annoyed that she was still gaming while the world burned, I knocked on the pod, forcing her to log out. She screamed in shock upon seeing us, recognizing Yi Mingzhu and eventually identifying me as the Night Demon. She bombarded me with questions about the reality-merging phenomenon, which I confirmed. Her raiding party had been too focused on their boss fight to fully grasp the chaos until now. As she tried to exit the pod, I noticed her legs and asked what was wrong. She struggled to sit up, asking for her wheelchair. She admitted she hadn't left the real world in a long time. I stopped Yi Mingzhu from helping. I noticed her custom pod had an oversized nutrient tank. It was designed to sustain her for years. I realized she wasn't just a gaming addict. She was avoiding reality entirely. She bit her lip, asking if I was disappointed by her condition. I teased her about her stunted development due to the nutrient diet. Furious, she tried to bite my arm, but her teeth couldn't penetrate my high-stat physique. She was petite and frail, her appearance even more pronounced in reality. I grabbed her feet. She had no sensation. When she accused me of pity, I countered that she was too strong to need anyone's sympathy. She had built the Rose Guild from nothing despite her disability. I picked her up, declaring I would cure her. She shook her head, believing it was impossible. I smiled. Science can't do it, but magic can. I ordered the goddess of space to open a portal. The gaming pod warped into a swirling portal. I signaled Yi Mingzhu, and we stepped through with Zi Qiangwei, arriving in a lost continent dungeon where Rose Guild members were waiting in confusion. They were worried about their wasted guild funds. The guild was already struggling financially. A portal suddenly appeared before them. I emerged, carrying a bewildered Zi Qiangwei. I wore my forbidden mage set, sans mask. The guild members were stunned. They were shocked to see their leader in pink pajamas, carried by the infamous Night Demon. Disheveled and embarrassed, Zi Qiangwei buried her face in my chest to hide. Yi Mingzhu appeared even more out of place, dressed in a white shirt, jeans, and heels, attire that shouldn't exist in the Lost Continent. The Rose Guild members were stunned. As they questioned if the worlds were truly merging, Zi Qiangwei felt a heavy weight in her heart. Her legs remained paralyzed. Despite the game's welcome prompts, the reality of her condition persisted. Fear gripped her, leaving her hands ice cold. The promise of a normal life in-game had been a major marketing point for years. Sensing her distress, I reassured her. Once she calmed down, she insisted I kill the nearby epic boss. With a wave of my hand, my Shadow Phantom assassins instantly executed the beast, triggering the system's kill notification. The Rose players watched in shock, having struggled against the boss for hours to no avail. I had wiped it out effortlessly with a few subordinates. I took Zi Qiangwei to the City of Light, while Yi Mingzhu returned to her territory. The Rose members finally realized their boss had been stolen by the Night Demon. They consoled themselves that the secret realm was cleared and they could loot the corpse later. Others worried about the implications. Zi Qiangwei was still in her pajamas, suggesting the Night Demon had found her in the real world. They knew her physical condition made her completely defenseless. Yet, seeing her shy demeanor, they decided not to interfere. At the City of Light Space Church, Zi Qiangwei insisted on changing her clothes. She didn't want to be seen in her casual pajamas. I agreed. When I offered to help, she snapped, "Get out." I teased her, but she bit my arm, a bite that felt like nothing to me now that we were fused with the game. I brought her to a priestess's room, noting that she would need to adapt to living in this world, and promised to have clothes delivered. I jokingly asked if she hadn't changed in years. Blushing, she threatened me, explaining that while she hadn't changed in weeks, the nutrient fluids kept her clean. I stopped teasing and called 2 priestesses to assist her. I was promptly kicked out of the room. Within a minute, Zi Qiangwei emerged in a standard ranger's leather outfit. She marveled at the newfound sensory details of the fabric. I explained that our heightened senses now allowed us to perceive textures previously lost to us. I picked her up again, noting how light she felt. The City of Light was unusually quiet, likely because players were offline discussing the real-world chaos. Most were busy gathering information. The paladins bowed respectfully, greeting the Grand Duke of Night Demon. I found Cecilia praying before a statue. After she finished, she looked at me with a mix of pain and disappointment. When asked if she could heal Xiqiangwei, she cast several divine arts, but they failed. She sighed, explaining that while light could heal wounds, it could not regenerate dead tissue. You must find the goddess of life, she concluded. As I turned to leave, Cecilia called out to me but hesitated, unable to speak. I understood her internal conflict. My recent actions had clearly violated the teachings of the God of Light. My path of destruction was at odds with the good faction. I patted her head, telling her to follow her heart. If you think I'm wrong, come for me. I won't hurt you, but I won't show mercy to your paladins. Cecilia puffed her cheeks in defiance, asking what would happen if she came alone. I laughed, dismissing the idea of a priestess fighting. I threatened to hang her from the ceiling if she tried. She defiantly opened her arms, inviting me to do it. I fell silent, and Cecilia declared, "From today on, I'm coming to your territory, Grand Duke." Confused, I asked if she was coming as a hostage, to which she replied, "I'm coming to supervise your actions." I nearly laughed aloud. The idea of anyone monitoring me was absurd. Without sufficient power, catching me in a slip-up would be meaningless anyway. I told Cecilia she could stay for food, but forbade her from developing followers in my territory and insisted she call me Yifan. Cecilia agreed eagerly. I left the City of Light, troubled by the difficulty of finding the mysterious goddess of life, an ancient deity as old as the universe. I asked the goddesses in my mind if they knew her. The weaker ones remained silent, while the goddess of death sent an angry emoji. I realized the goddess of death and the goddess of life were natural rivals. The current goddess of death, Lin, was not the original. Her power grew with every death, while the goddess of life's power thrived on the living, a direct contradiction. The goddess of space mentioned she hadn't seen her in ages, but knew the location of her divine kingdom. I took a deep breath and declared we were going to find her, determined to succeed, even if it meant war. Back at my territory, I mobilized all heroes and troops, including Vivian, ready to summon Shadow Realm forces or trigger Vivian's transformation if necessary. I knew that without strength, I wouldn't even earn a seat at the negotiating table. The goddesses were also ready, especially the goddess of death, who was eager to clash with the goddess of life. Seeing the massive mobilization, Xiqiangwei was alarmed. She urged me to stop, but I firmly refused, stating I wouldn't let her situation continue. Touched, Xiqiangwei bit her lip and insisted I didn't need to do this for her, as they had no real relationship. I was stunned, asking, "Didn't you join my Crystal Palace?" Xiqiangwei was confused. As a modern Blue Star native, she didn't care for the term Crystal Palace. They stared at each other until I pulled up the official forum. I showed her headlines like, "Shinji Alliance supports Rose Guild. They conquered a boss together. True divine love." And, "The truth behind the Night Demon and Xiqiangwei. When did they fall in love?" Xiqiangwei blushed, calling it baseless rumors. I asked why she didn't refute them, leaving her speechless. She knew refuting would only make it worse. Silence was the best policy. I shrugged. "Regardless, you're part of my Crystal Palace now." Xiqiangwei insisted she didn't need my pity. She argued that if I only pitted her because of her physical condition, I should stop, as she had survived this long on her own. I clarified it wasn't pity, and when she asked if I liked her, I admitted I did. Xiqiangwei's eyes shimmered, her heart clearly unsettled. She questioned if I was just annoyed by her, thought she was weak, or was only interested in her appearance. I sighed at her sensitivity. I retorted, "Lin Ruoxue, you hide behind a mask, and your body. What would I even be after?" Xiqiangwei bit my arm in frustration. I pinched her cheek, telling her to focus on healing her body first. She nodded obediently. The goddess of space, watching with jealousy, opened a brilliant, space-tearing supreme portal. I scanned it. It was a supreme portal from the goddess of space, capable of reaching any corner of the universe. I had never seen such a portal before. I led my troops through. The system announced they had entered a special area where all units recovered 10% HP per second. It warned that this was a divine kingdom and my presence was considered a malicious intrusion. A lush, glowing meadow appeared before me. In the clear sky floated a magnificent, holy divine kingdom. I scanned the grass, realizing it was the goddess of life's domain. The grass was legendary grade, capable of healing 30 million HP. Zi Qiangwei gasped at the effect. I wiped drool from her chin, teasing her, before millions of holy, winged female warriors appeared, demanding to know why I was invading. My scan revealed they were divine units from the goddess of life, highly skilled and battle-hardened. I couldn't see their full stats, which was expected for divine units. They were far stronger than standard units, though not quite crown tier. Their strength lay in their use of rules and divine power, which required significant resources to produce. The goddess of life had an abundance of power to create such an army. However, a restriction from the creator god prevented these units from entering the main plane. I demanded to see the goddess of life. A petitioner told me the goddess was seeing no one and ordered me to leave. I realized I needed to make a bigger scene. I prepared to use the 9 hammers of destiny and call upon the 4 goddesses, but a gentle, soothing voice, the goddess of life, ordered the guards to let them in. I rode Sylvia toward the floating kingdom, trusting the goddess's pride to avoid petty traps. The system announced I had entered the divine kingdom, where I would stop aging and my HP would remain permanently maxed. Zi Qiangwei and I were stunned by the absurdity of the effect. I marveled at the goddess of life's near-limitless divine power, noting her near-invincibility. I surveyed the divine kingdom. Floating, brilliant architecture filled the air, reminiscent of the city of mages. The most striking features were massive, glowing flower beds. These were condensed from the goddess's divine power, tethered to the universe's life essence. At the center stood a grand palace where a petite figure awaited. I was stunned. Despite my 2 lifetimes, I hadn't expected the goddess of life to appear as a lowly. While deities could manifest any form, they usually chose their ideal image. Some, like the goddess of dawn, shifted between forms like mature women, lowless, or elderly women. The goddess of life glared at me. "You dare come to me?" I was taken aback. I hadn't provoked her, yet she demanded to know why I slaughtered so many beings. I realized my mass-killing tactics had displeased her. To grow stronger, I replied. She countered, "And then what? You already dominate the main plane. Even gods are no match for you. You have everything, yet you still slaughter." "What?" She scoffed, claiming the creator never intended for fairness. Some are born strong like angels, others weak. Why not accept your lot? Even as a god, you only invite endless strife. My expression chilled. You were born a god. You don't understand. For us, every day is a struggle for survival. Strength is the only way to live. Unmoved, she dismissed my philosophy and asked for my purpose. I gestured to Zi Qiangwei. "Heal her." The goddess laughed, questioning why I'd risk war for a human, yet I sensed she was surprisingly attentive to me. I knew war with her was irrational, but I followed my heart. If I lacked the courage to act, my rebirth was meaningless. The goddess sighed. "If you are truly the one the goddess of space seeks, I will place my bet." With a wave, she bathed Zi Qiangwei in light. Instantly, a new skill appeared on Zi Qiangwei's status bar. She didn't check the skill, focusing instead on her legs. She nearly kicked me in her excitement. I chuckled, confirming her legs were healed. She stepped down, walking unsteadily but joyfully, holding my hand. Her legs were fully restored. I asked for the price, knowing there were no free lunches. She demanded, "Join me when you fight the demons." A system prompt confirmed the unique hidden quest. The quest required me to partner with her against the demons. It was a unique hidden quest with unknown difficulty and rewards. I was thrilled. I would take 1,000 such quests. Demons were inter-universal invaders responsible for countless deaths. The goddess despised them. During the war of gods and demons, they had even attacked her divine kingdom. I, who died to demons in my past life, sought revenge anyway. With Zi Qiangwei healed, we departed. The goddess of space appeared in the divine kingdom. The goddess of life complained about being threatened over a man, but the goddess of space remained indifferent. The goddess of life fumed about being coerced. The goddess of space offered no apology. The goddess of life pouted. asking if this man was truly more important than their ancient bond. They were primordial deities with a long history. The goddess of space confirmed my importance, leaving the goddess of life stunned and jealous. Both were neutral guardians of universal rules for millennia. Now, the goddess of space seemed ready to abandon those rules for me. Curiosity piqued. The goddess of life wondered what charm I possessed. Back in my territory, I guided Ziqiangwei. After an hour, she walked steadily. She was sweating, her face flushed behind her fox mask. I asked why she wore the mask, but she insisted on privacy. I found her secrecy strange, as she was safe in my territory. She had hidden in my arms during the secret realm as well. I questioned why she feared being seen. She explained she didn't want her hard work attributed to luck or connections, especially since she had no background in reality. I understood. Despite her status as a guild leader, she lacked real-world influence. She revealed her past. Abandoned at birth, raised by a grandmother who had since passed. Gaming had given her a life, wealth, and a position she never dreamed of. I want to prove that even a paraplegic can be a powerhouse. I replied, "You've already proven that to the world." I recalled her past life as a formidable Rose Guild leader, one of the Dragon Kingdom's strongest. I shook off the nostalgia and removed her mask. Seeing her beautiful face, I smiled. "Don't wear that mask again, at least not in front of me." Ziqiangwei smirked. Only now realizing my charm, I rolled my eyes. "With that frail frame of yours?" "Hardly." Her smile froze. She narrowed her eyes, whispering, "Are you looking to die?" I remained silent. I picked her up bridal style. "That's enough for today. Keep practicing. You'll be back on your feet soon." Ziqiangwei shot me a look and asked, "What about Nanyan Xiaoshui?" I paused. "What happened to her?" "You don't know? Your actions in reality have likely made everyone associated with you a wanted criminal." My expression darkened. I had forgotten she was just an ordinary person. "Do you know where she is?" Ziqiangwei asked dangerously. "Is she part of your crystal palace too?" I was speechless. Did she think I was a playboy? I only had a dozen or so women. I coughed. Perhaps I was a bit excessive. I sighed, realizing how many women I had become entangled with. "I'm not actually close with that rich girl," I claimed. Minutes later, I arrived at the villa and assigned Stephanie's followers to care for her. As I prepared to have the goddess of space open a portal to Blue Star, a cold voice echoed behind us. "You don't need to worry about Nanyan Xiaoshui." My hair stood on end. I recognized that voice, the same one that had shocked me since my rebirth. I turned to see Yu Luo, the Arcane Empire's top mage, hidden in robes. I narrowed my eyes. Her ability to bypass my territory's defenses without detection was terrifying. Realizing this was just an avatar, I asked, "Why?" "No reason. Her identity is special. The goddess of moonlight will explain later." I raised an eyebrow. "What does the goddess of moonlight have to do with this?" Yu Luo replied playfully, "Guess." I twitched. How could I guess? Did the rich girl have the goddess's favor? I decided to trust her. If Nanyan Xiaoshui was safe, I was truly severed from Blue Star. "Between you and the goddess of life, who is better at life magic?" Yu Luo scoffed. "Her, obviously. What do you take me for, the creator god?" She then vanished, cutting off further conversation. I gritted my teeth, vowing to settle the score when I grew stronger. Suddenly, a light green mist coalesced into Layla, who looked furious. "Yu Luo was here." "Where?" I laughed. "Calm down. She's not hostile, and you're no match for her." Layla stomped her foot, offended, and turned to leave. I pulled her into a hug. She huffed. "What are you doing?" I teased. "Should I let go?" She snapped. "You dare?" She leaned into me, grumbling. "Your crystal palace is getting bigger." "I'm sorry," I replied. Layla sighed. "Forget it. Both girls have unique backgrounds. I suppose I approve." I patted her head, smoothing her ruffled hair. Finding her endearing, I asked, "Layla, how about that supreme blessing?" Layla blushed. The supreme blessing linked a god's essence to a believer, a rare event, though I already held 3. She stammered, "You haven't retrieved my dowry yet. Once you do, I'll give you everything." I realized she meant the arcane golems in the factory and the secret laboratory. I pinched her cheek. "Let's go to that lab now." Layla was stunned. "Now? You said you'd give me everything. How could I resist?" Layla blushed. I won't go back on my word." We mobilized, and Layla prepared to descend in her true form. 10 minutes later, we arrived at the site. The area looked like an open plain, but it felt unnatural. The landscape was strangely devoid of the surrounding forest. Suddenly, the ground rumbled and cracked. A massive legendary grade arcane golem emerged. It scanned us. Data scan complete. Welcome to the Arcane Royal Laboratory, Princess Layla. Layla demanded a status report, but the golem replied, insufficient authority. Layla turned red with rage. I am Princess Layla. The entire army is under my command. The golem repeated, insufficient authority. I found her frustration amusing. I pondered the situation. The lab was built before Layla became a god, when she commanded the empire. The chief scientist clearly had ulterior motives. I waved my hand, unleashing a barrage of arrows that instantly destroyed the golem. The golem's body shrank into a blue core. I could use this to craft a new golem. A portal to the secret realm appeared. I used Scout, Arcane Empire's first laboratory, created by Chief Scientist Shelter. Contains countless improved arcane golem subspecies. Level 200. Difficulty, Doomsday. Unique. Doomsday level. I was shocked. It was my first time encountering a Doomsday level secret realm. The Doomsday level secret realm is a hidden difficulty, far surpassing Nightmare level. This realm is one-time use and fixed difficulty. It closes permanently once cleared. I entered immediately, and the system announced, you have entered the Doomsday level secret realm. Objectives issued. Warning. Due to the Doomsday level difficulty, your unit's stats are reduced by 70%, while monster stats are increased by 70%. Current objective. Kill the Empire's first scientist. Time remaining. 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. The stat modifiers are absurd, creating a massive gap between the player's weakened forces and the buffed monsters. Despite the imbalance, my existing bonuses render the stat penalties negligible. I surveyed the area, noting brilliant azure stone pillars. These massive, intricately carved pillars supported the entire underground structure. Crystal lamps bathed the space in blue light. Sensing dense magical energy, I cast a scout spell on the floor. I grimaced. The floor was carpeted with top-tier magic traps. Normal players would be wiped out by these traps before even reaching the mobs. Even crown-tier units would perish without specialized gear. For me, however, they were useless. My maxed magic resistance granted total immunity. Layla gazed at the architecture, her eyes filled with nostalgia. She recalled her happy childhood in the royal palace. I patted her head, asking if she missed it. Layla murmured that it was just a memory. She added that she wanted to build a palace in that style on their floating island. I agreed, noting the island's vast size. I then ignored the traps and led my troops forward. Instantly, the traps detonated, releasing torrents of energy. Explosions rocked the realm. The system logged 0 damage repeatedly for 20 minutes. The traps were endless, spanning the entire path. There must have been billions of them. Finally, they reached a massive hall, and I signaled a halt. I cast Scout repeatedly, revealing 12.5 million arcane golems. Their gear, from the first laboratory, used chameleon gene fluid for camouflage. Mythical Grade 7. The gear provided permanent invisibility, undetectable below immortal grade. I only spotted them due to my sensitivity to magical energy. I ordered my troops to attack. The golems, being mere tanks, were wiped out in a second. I collected millions of arcane cores. These cores would allow me to rebuild my army back at my territory. Suddenly, the system warned, warning, you triggered a mechanism. The space will explode in 3 seconds. I was startled. Layla had fallen into a hidden trapdoor. She flew up using divine power, though her hair was disheveled. I immediately deployed the Dragon Soul Barrier, fully charged by my Frost Dragons. 3 seconds passed. A massive explosion tore through the underground space. Blue magical energy ravaged the surroundings. Damage numbers of 200 billion appeared repeatedly. The barrier held firm. I realized it was magic damage and felt silly for worrying, then checked on Layla. Layla poked her fingers together, apologizing weakly. I didn't blame her. The trap was too well hidden. I moved on. We had already killed over 50 million golems of various types. The variety of golems was staggering, forming a complete army. After 30 minutes, We reached the final location, where the first scientist stood among his instruments. The man was elderly, his skin clearly artificial. I cast Scout. Target, Shelter, First Scientist. Level 200, Mythical Grade 3. Stats, 0 attack, 6.8 million defense, 900 billion HP. Shelter noticed us. He turned, his mechanical eyes locking onto Layla. He trembled, crying out, "Princess Layla? Have you finally accepted my courtship?" Layla was bewildered and quickly explained to me that she barely knew the man. I knew she was innocent. I smiled and pulled Layla into my arms. "I trust you." Shelter watched, devastated. He couldn't believe the noble princess was in another man's arms. "Damn you. Who are you? Let her go," the system announced. "Warning. You have enraged the boss. He will launch a relentless attack, ignoring realm restrictions." I ignored the threat of endless pursuit. I was surprised to see Shelter could bypass the secret realm's restrictions to attack my territory directly. Without further ado, I picked up Layla and kissed her. Shelter froze, his mechanical eyes glowing red as he stared at me. Moments later, Layla playfully punched my chest and hid her face in my arms. I mocked Shelter, asking if he was worthy of Layla. Enraged, Shelter accused me of bewitching her and vowed to save her, his body erupting in blinding light. I remained calm, knowing the Arcane Empire's chief scientist was no weakling. Shelter was a mythical Tier 3 entity, having spent millennia perfecting his technology. His body was heavily reinforced, granting him immense defensive capabilities. As the lab shook, four massive, 30-meter-tall steel giants emerged behind Shelter. Each step caused the ground to tremble. I used my scout spell. The giants were mythical Tier 9, 200-level ultimate steel puppets crafted from materials gathered across hundreds of planes. With 2 billion defense and 90 trillion HP, I was stunned by their stats. Their defense was so high that even Layla couldn't penetrate it. They even possessed a skill granting 20% resistance to divine power. I was impressed but remained unbothered. Unless it was an immortal grade unit, I considered everything else trash. Realizing Shelter's fatal weakness was his own physical form, I used a forbidden mage skill. A mysterious white light enveloped Shelter, instantly emptying his HP bar. Shelter, still possessing a biological heart and brain, was deleted. Layla pinched me for the public display of affection, though she secretly enjoyed it. She found herself strangely accepting of their public intimacy. The 4 steel puppets collapsed, paralyzed. I approached Shelter's corpse to collect the loot. I triggered 10,000 times amplification on all items. Despite the difficulty of the Doomsday-level secret realm, my skills made short work of the challenge. I examined an immortal-grade perfect bionic body, rumored to be from another universe. Layla noted these parts didn't belong to the Arcane Empire, confirming their extraterrestrial origin. The parts offered significant, percentage-based attribute boosts without negative side effects. I, a firm believer in my own flesh, stored them away for future investigation. I found an immortal-grade tech arm capable of granting massive strength. It provided a 2,000% strength boost at the cost of attack speed. It was a simple, brutal power-up. I equipped it to my golden dragons to bolster their lackluster attack power. Most dragons couldn't transform into humanoids. I moved on to the final item. It was a fragment of the magic network, containing the power of the goddess of magic. It granted a chance to obtain authority over the magic network. I noted the name of the goddess differed from the current one. I knew the previous goddess well. This was likely a relic from a fallen predecessor. The fragment was clearly a remnant from the Great Explosion. The ability to gain authority over the magic network was terrifying. Even gods were powerless if denied access to the network. I used the item. The system checked my stats, requiring 8,000 intelligence and spirit. I was shocked by the high requirements. The system paused briefly. I successfully parsed the fragment, gaining 0.2% authority. 10,000 times amplification triggered, boosting my authority to 100% and allowing me to forcibly seize control. A vast, infinite web appeared in my mind. It was the magic network spanning the universe. It was created by the creator god based on a mysterious network found in the cosmos. Current status, 99% held by the goddess of magic, 1% by the unknown. I gasped. I now held the power that had forced the goddess of magic to compromise. I realized the magic network was crucial, and obtaining full administrative access to it was absurdly powerful. While I couldn't see the exact numerical value of the universe's magic without activating my permissions, I understood its scale. I was certain that if I unleashed all that power without restraint, even the true form of the goddess of darkness, multiplied by hundreds, would be instantly obliterated. A dangerous glint appeared in my eyes. I was truly invincible. With the goddess of magic previously planning war against me, perhaps it was time for a conversation. I took a deep breath, choosing not to seize permanent control of the magic network just yet. I knew that dealing with the goddess of magic required a single, fatal strike. I couldn't afford to give her any breathing room. Brief usage was fine, but full control wasn't the priority. I decided to clear the secret realm first. Puzzled as to why the secret realm hadn't cleared despite killing Shelter, I approached the control consoles. Strange code ran across the screens. Layla frowned and began typing. Suddenly, text appeared. "You think you've killed me? I am immortal." I raised an eyebrow. Layla sighed. "Shelter has a device that uploads his brainwaves to the network upon death." I frowned. "Can we kill him?" Layla shook her head. "It's difficult. He can transmit his consciousness anywhere via the network. Only the goddess of magic could stop him." I paused. The magic network? That was my domain now. Text appeared on the screen again. "Don't get cocky. Princess Layla will be mine. You're no match for the great Shelter." I sneered. Shelter was still targeting Layla, an unforgivable offense. I took control, and the system confirmed. Permissions granted. All nodes mapped. Beyond just a system, I merged with the magic network itself. My body surged with terrifying magical energy. My mana became infinite. Ignoring the details, I scanned the nearby network and found a discordant, sinister presence. I manifested a giant hand of pure energy and snatched the entity. Ding! You have killed the target. Secret realm cleared. Rating SSS. 10,000 times amplification triggered. I relinquished control in under a second. In a distant, brilliant divine kingdom, a slender woman on a throne stood up abruptly. Her sapphire eyes widened, her body tense. She felt a momentary loss of control over the magic network. How was that possible? She didn't have 100% control. A fraction was lost during the Great Explosion, and she had spent millennia searching for the remnants. The goddess of darkness had claimed one part to create her own network. Another part fell to the goddess of luck, sparking their later conflict. But these fragments shouldn't affect her core authority. The goddess of magic felt restless, especially since the Blue Star Lord entered the lost continent. After a thorough check revealed no issues, she sighed, wondering if she was simply exhausted. I knew the goddess would only be confused, never suspecting the truth. I turned my attention to my rewards, full control of the laboratory. I opened the data page. Description: a top-secret facility built by the 76th king of the Arcane Empire, led by the scientist Shelter, focused on arcane golem research. Level: 10 max. Area: 6 million grids. Features: control center, arcane energy extractor, storage, labs, 20 production lines, etc. Forces: 640 million arcane golems, 150 million poison golems, 350 million steel golems. All crown tier, inactive. Defenses: 64.8 billion traps, 12,000 legendary arcane energy cannons. Mana: 130,000/9.99 quadrillion. I gasped. This was more than just a lab. It had nearly 10 billion golems, dwarfing Layla's factory. The defensive power was equally absurd, with 12,000 legendary cannons. The only flaw was the lack of crystals after millennia of use. I began collecting the blueprints and technology. The system flooded me with notifications. I rubbed my ears as the system chimed incessantly. I had finally secured the crystallized wisdom of the Arcane Empire. Layla's data had been incomplete, but this was comprehensive. Beyond blueprints, my buildings leveled up. Legendary defenses became mythical. If I had more, they might reach immortal grade. I also gained activation rights for all golems. This was the dowry Layla had mentioned. With these rights, the countless legendary arcane golems were now operational. These golems possessed stats far exceeding crown tier, rivaling legendary bosses. Additionally, I unlocked new golem types for recruitment. Types like poison, swift, steel, and repair golems formed a perfectly balanced army. Browsing the warehouse, I found 2 pieces of exclusive equipment. Description: special wings designed by Shelter for arcane golems, providing massive HP, defense, and flight. Grade: Mythical, Tier 6. Type: unit equipment. Level: 1. Attributes: 1. Plus 30% HP/defense. 2. Immune to attacks under 25k. 3. Flight at 2.5x speed. Restriction: unit only. Description: additional modules by Shelter for arcane golems, granting new skills. Grade: Mythical, Tier 6. Type: unit equipment. Level: 1. Attributes: 1. Taunt. Enemies within 20,000 yards forced to attack for 300s. 2. Damage reflection. Reflects 30% of incoming damage. The equipment allows arcane golems to absorb damage within a 20,000-yard radius. Limited to specific units, this gear grants arcane golems massive health and defense boosts. It grants immunity to attacks under 25,000 damage and enables flight. 2 new modules provide a powerful taunt, forcing nearby enemies to target the golem. Another module provides a potent damage reflection skill, turning the golems into lethal weapons when combined with their high health and taunts. A final skill allows the Golem Legion to share damage, with tank types absorbing hits for others. I equipped these, noting my units still had plenty of empty slots. With my current buffs, I ignore any equipment below legendary grade. I activated 4 ultimate steel golems, intrigued by their resistance to divine power. Layla stared at the lab in a daze. I patted her head, telling her to leave the lab for the goddess of space to transport to the floating island later. Layla agreed. Back at my territory, I summoned the goddesses to inspect the golems. Stephanie bathed them in moonlight. She noted their shells were made of a material that blocked her divine power. The goddess of death reacted with an emoticon. She summoned a massive, ominous scythe. It looked absurdly large against her petite frame. She rolled up her sleeves, ready to dismantle the golems. I quickly restrained her, knowing she wasn't as fragile as Stephanie. One strike from her would reduce these golems to scrap, regardless of their resistance. Since even she was clueless about the golems, everyone turned to the goddess of space. I noted her elegant, ancient attire. She studied the golems. She concluded the materials weren't from this universe. I asked if she knew the origin. She pointed to the Sky Knights behind me, suggesting a connection to their civilization. She warned me I wasn't strong enough to intervene yet. Feeling underestimated, I pulled her into my arms. She remained calm, asking if I was annoyed. I replied I felt fine. She smiled, accepting my embrace. I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and declared we were going to war with the goddess of magic. The goddesses were stunned. The goddess of magic was level 18+, capable of destroying the main plane if pushed. Her power allowed her to maintain absolute neutrality. Layla questioned the decision, but I was resolute. The goddesses prepared for the daunting task. The goddess of space noted the goddess of magic's defenses were formidable. I clarified I didn't intend to attack conventionally. I wanted to be teleported directly into her divine kingdom. Entering a deity's divine kingdom was considered a death sentence. Few deities possessed the patience of the goddess of life. Divine kingdoms were fortified with countless defensive facilities. Deities usually fought via proxies on the main plane. The goddess of space, understanding my calculated nature, agreed and opened a colorful portal. Across the universe, the goddess of magic sensed the intrusion. Her divine kingdom was breached by the portal. She realized the goddess of space was behind it, noting their conflicting domains. The magic network relied on universal rules, which both goddesses influenced. If they fought, all spatial magic would be disabled for their followers. She had previously tolerated me due to leverage I held over her. As she watched, Sylvia emerged from the portal. I surveyed the divine kingdom. The kingdom was filled with ornate mage towers. Magic energy was abundant, boosting arcane magic and mana regeneration. The palace of the goddess of magic stood at the center. I, who had served her in my past life, had never been allowed to see this place. Now, I could roam freely. Sylvia landed at the palace, surrounded by hostile petitioners. The goddess of magic sat on her throne, demanding to know the meaning of my intrusion. I claimed I was just there to chat. Ignoring her killing intent, I began sightseeing with Sylvia. I critiqued the scenery and the asymmetrical layout. I mocked the petitioners, suggesting they were overly familiar with her palace. The petitioners were outraged. They wondered if I was merely there to provoke her. The goddess of magic knew I was too calculating to act without a motive. She told me to leave if I had nothing of substance to say. I ignored her and triggered my system. I seized full control of the magic network, stripping her of her authority. With the system's boost, I reached 100% control, revoking everyone else's access. The goddess of magic trembled in shock. I extinguished the lights of the divine kingdom, leaving the petitioners in a panic as their staves lost power. All skills were disabled. How could the goddess of magic's followers be forbidden from using magic? It was utterly absurd. I approached the goddess of magic, whose face remained obscured by divine power. "Can we talk now?" The goddess waved her hand, dismissing her reluctant followers. As they retreated, the Mage Tower's facilities ceased functioning due to my magic suppression. Her divine kingdom was inextricably linked to the magic network. It was a miracle the kingdom hadn't collapsed entirely after being severed from the network. The goddess took a breath, trying to sound composed. "What did you do to the magic network?" I ignored her. "Before we negotiate, remove the divine veil from your face." A mask of divine power hid her true features. Seeing her face was the dream of every Blue Star mage who had once sought her protection. I was curious, but the goddess flatly refused. I sneered at her continued arrogance. "Understand your situation, goddess. I'm done negotiating. You have 5 minutes to try and reclaim the magic network's authority." My patience is thin. If the network explodes in certain areas, that's on you. The goddess rose, furious, her divine pressure flooding the kingdom. As a powerful deity, her strength wasn't solely dependent on the network. I, unfazed by the pressure, snapped my fingers. The goddess felt a chill run down her spine. "What did you do?" she demanded. "Nothing much, just reclaimed a portion of the network in the Underdark." The goddess panicked. "Are you insane? The creator god decreed the network must remain neutral. It maintains cosmic balance. If you mess with it, the entire universe is at risk." I picked my ear. "Not my problem." The goddess trembled with rage. I knew the risks, but I had only targeted a small area near Tijuana's dungeon. I wouldn't destroy the universe I lived in. I had only seized a tiny fragment near the dungeon. A minute later, the goddess sighed and dispelled her veil. My eyes lit up. Her beauty was exquisite, a masterpiece of the creator god. She suppressed her fury. "State your terms. Grant me your highest level blessing and cooperate with my actions unconditionally. In exchange, I'll return the network authority. This is my minimum requirement." I could have easily installed my own puppet as the new goddess of magic. However, I felt conflicted. I had served her for years and didn't truly want her dead. Despite her flaws, her protection had kept me alive in my past life. After a tense silence, the goddess closed her eyes. "Fine." A brilliant light descended upon me. The system confirmed the blessing. A surge of azure energy flooded my soul. It was the goddess's essence. A profound, intimate link now connected them. The goddess resisted this, as the blessing consumed her divine power. If the blessing were revoked or I died, she would suffer grave damage. I checked the effects. 1. Supreme authority over the magic church. Troops are permanently loyal. 2. I act as her representative. Other gods' attitudes will shift. 3. Units/buildings immune to magic below tier 8. 4. Arcane damage plus 1000%. Elemental damage plus 500%. 5. Partial network access. 6. Shared mana pool, 635.8 quadrillion. 7. Units below immortal grade cannot view my information. The buffs were significant for my army, though I laughed at the partial network access. I already held 100% control. I didn't need her scraps or her mana. "Satisfied?" she asked coldly. "You won't regret this," I replied. As I reached for her face, she vanished into blue light. Her voice echoed, "Watch your behavior, Duke of Nightmares, or I will destroy us both." I realized she was serious. Sylvia laughed, and I pinched her cheeks in retaliation. Sylvia smiled. Frustrated because you couldn't touch the goddess, so you take it out on me? I smiled. To me, you are far more important than her. Humph. Sylvia cast a charming, sidelong glance at me. Despite her feigned annoyance, the words clearly pleased her. The goddess of magic watched coldly. I took my leave, and she replied emotionlessly. Minutes later, back in my territory, Layla and Stephanie were stunned, while the goddess of death and goddess of space looked on thoughtfully. Stephanie couldn't believe I had obtained the supreme blessing of the goddess of magic, a feat she, having served the goddess of moonlight, found bitter and unattainable. I now held the blessings of 5 goddesses. Sensing her jealousy, I pulled her into my arms. Don't worry, goddess, I won't let you down. Stephanie blushed, My eyes glinted. As the goddess of magic's closest confidant, I could now command the entire magic church. I decided to revisit the city of mages, departing immediately with Sylvia. The city of mages. The once splendid city was now desolate, its streets empty and shops deserted. Since I disabled all teleportation arrays, the city had become a nightmare for mages. Some mages, physically frail, had even collapsed from exhaustion while climbing towers. Mages from other regions avoided the city entirely. Entering meant a permanent loss of space magic, a fate worse than death. I was surprised by how quickly the city had deteriorated. My arrival triggered alarms. Frank, the Mage Guild president, approached on a griffin, looking ridiculous. A mythical-grade archmage who once relied on teleportation and blinking to show off. Now, he was reduced to riding a griffin. The griffin, though sturdy, trembled like an ant before Sylvia's dragon aura, nearly throwing Frank off. Upon reaching me, Frank's eyes widened as he sensed the intense aura of the goddess of magic on me. I commanded, President Frank, gather all archmages and the Mage Council. Frank nodded grimly. Half an hour later, in the high-level war room, the archmages gathered. Lacking teleportation, they had arrived on griffins. Seeing me, they were terrified. They dared not offend the goddess of magic. I stated, from today, the city of mages withdraws from the Six-Nation Alliance and becomes an ally of the Kent Kingdom. We will engage in friendly academic exchange and progress together. Furthermore, the Saintess of the Magic Church will lead the Mage Council. Any objections? Silence filled the room. The Mage Council members were livid. This was a blatant power grab. While they served the royal family, they had always been wary of the Magic Church. They knew this exchange was just a pretext to strip the city of its knowledge and technology for Sindri City. Yet, seeing the priest's fanatical devotion to me, whom they viewed as the saint of the goddess of magic, the council members felt trapped. Frank signaled an archmage, who stood up and shouted, Night Demon, don't go too far. The Mage Council has led this city for centuries. We have coexisted peacefully with the church. I glanced at the mythical-grade archmage and snapped my fingers. The archmage's anger turned to horror as he realized he could no longer channel mana. What did you do to me? I replied, I simply revoked your access to the magic network. Silence returned, heavier than before. Revoked access meant they couldn't even cast a small fireball. Their combat power was effectively 0. They couldn't even defeat a Tier 1 unit. Conversely, the priests were even more fervent. The magic network was the goddess's most prized possession. That I could manage it proved I was authorized by the goddess herself. Frank sighed. We must report this to the king. I gave him 5 minutes. Tell him if he refuses, the magic network will be permanently disabled across all city territories. The council members were stunned by my ruthlessness. The royal family were mere puppets. I knew the council would fold. I ordered the priests, disband the current Mage Council. The Magic Church takes full control. Issue an ultimatum to all city-states. Those who refuse will lose magic network access tomorrow. City lords must be priests. Once integrated, the city of mages will be renamed the Magic Empire. The priests nodded eagerly. For a mage, losing the magic network was worse than death. I continued my instructions. The city had been a loose, bickering federation. Previously, other city-states had watched idly as I attacked, wasting their potential. I intended to unify them. I found the goddess of magic's passive nature frustrating. She stayed in her divine kingdom, caring only for the network. With the church's authority, she could have unified the lost continent long ago. An hour later, The system announcements boomed. World announcement. The Mage Council has undergone a leadership change. Frank has stepped down. World announcement. Laws updated. The City of Mages has signed an alliance with the Kent Kingdom. I stretched. The mages had folded quickly once their access was threatened. The goddess of magic's voice echoed in my mind. Don't go too far. I remained neutral to maintain balance. I laughed through our soul connection. Neutrality. Neutrality is just a fig leaf for the weak. Why stay neutral when you can conquer everyone? The goddess fell silent, unable to argue. Meanwhile, players were indifferent to the game news. They were preoccupied with the real-world events in Blue Star. Everyone was speculating about what happened in City B. The Dragon Kingdom's military had successfully tracked down me and my associates, Zi Qiangwei, Yi Mingzhu, and Nan Yin Xiaoshui. The room was completely stripped bare. I had even had the goddess of space pack up the entire structure. Deep within Blue Star, the few surviving demons went into hiding. I was well aware of this. The ancient demon king possessing Zhanhu and Wuqing would naturally scatter demons to infiltrate the planet. Disguise was a basic skill for any high-blooded demon. Soon, chaos would erupt on Blue Star, and the path to the bottomless abyss would reopen. Of course, that was no longer my concern. I left the City of Mages, leaving the priests and the saintess to manage the new empire. After sending Sylvia back to my territory, I teleported to Sindri City. Reconstruction was nearly finished. Damaged buildings were repaired. Anything beyond repair was replaced with superior structures. I upgraded the city walls from mythical to immortal grade. Inspecting the city, I headed to the palace. The Zerg had been cleared by the Shinji Alliance and players, with the remnants chased into the depths by the 9 great temples. The underground voids were filled by the goddesses, ensuring no more Zerg surprises. Empress Lena had officially moved in, and the guards dared not stop me as I entered her chambers. She was busy with paperwork, looking up at me with bright eyes. Her gaze lacked its former icy hostility. The Kent Kingdom was developing well. With Layla's assistance, she had settled into her role as empress. Layla, despite her silliness, had experience as a princess and helped manage affairs. Lena set down her documents and asked, "Grand Duke of Night Demon, why do you miss every meeting?" I was stunned. Did she really think of me as her vassal? I flicked her forehead. "I'm too busy for that." Lena rubbed her head in pain. She huffed. "Watch your behavior, Duke. And this is my chamber." Before she could finish, I pulled her into my arms. Lena gasped, dropping her documents, and steadied herself. She complained about her messy gown, noting she had a meeting soon. I laughed, removing her crown and letting her silver hair cascade down. When she retorted with a familiar cold sneer, I rolled my eyes, feeling as though her icy personality was contagious. Lena leaned against me, relaxing her body. A few minutes passed. She noted that the resources I transferred far exceeded the kingdom's population capacity, leaving 70% idle. I stroked her cheek and nodded. The resources from the universe kingdom alone were vast. "This is nothing," I said. "My plan involves hundreds of times more." "Don't worry, a large population will be arriving soon." Lena accepted this without question. I recalled my past life. "Watch the coastal and steel kingdoms," I warned. "They are ambitious." Lena nodded solemnly, and I blinked, surprised by her uncharacteristic obedience. She had changed from a defiant queen to a docile partner. She knew she would never marry anyone but me, and our engagement was common knowledge. She had learned my character. I never mistreated my own. Nuzzling into my chest, she asked, "Can I ask you something?" After a pause, she whispered, "Can you see the future, or are you from it?" My heart skipped a beat. She had deduced my rebirth. I had kept my rebirth a secret from everyone. My silence confirmed her suspicions. She looked up and asked, "What was our fate and the goddesses in the original timeline?" I replied, "A miserable death." Lena didn't press further, offering a genuine smile instead. "Thank you for saving the goddess," she said sincerely. I felt lost. I had only approached Layla for protection and power. I had only wanted to control the Kent Kingdom to expand my strength. "Call me Yifan," I sighed. "And please keep this secret, even from Layla." Lena agreed, but suggested I be honest with the goddess. I shook my head. "The past is gone. Let's cherish the present." I teased, "I saved you too. Don't I deserve a reward?" Lena blushed and leaned in, sharing a brief kiss. Is that enough? She asked softly. After chatting, she prepared for her meeting. I was ushered out and headed deeper into the palace to find the other princess. I entered a quiet, remote room. Princess Betty stood by a desk, reading history. She asked, "Grand Duke, do you need something?" I sat down, noting the room was decent. "Are you settling in well?" Betty poured me tea, smiling. "Empress Lena treats me well." I chuckled at her impeccable, albeit fake, royal etiquette. I cut to the chase. "I'm not a politician. I don't deal in pleasantries. I will ensure your safety and your country's, provided you remain obedient." Betty's expression hardened as she dropped the act. "Understood," she replied. I left immediately. She was smart enough to understand. I returned to my territory. I began organizing my troops for my next objective, invading the underground world. My resources are massive, but still insufficient for my floating island ambitions. My previous seizure of the Underdark's magic network wasn't just to threaten the goddess of magic. The Underdark is rich in crystals and iron ore. To extract these, I need a massive workforce. Since my own capacity is limited to 10,000, I decide to invade the Underdark to secure these resources. I head to the City of Light to prepare. In the command room, the Paladin captains glare at me with hostility. The atmosphere is suffocating. They now realize I lack any shred of benevolence. Commander Jack coughs, asking, "Duke of Nightmares, why have you summoned us?" I reply, "I am launching a massive holy war and require the Church's cooperation." I toss a battle plan onto the table. The captains are stunned to find it contains the exact coordinates of the Church of Darkness, Poison Cult, and Doom Church. They are shocked by the strategic value of this intelligence. Previously, entering the Underdark was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Now, they have the means for precision strikes. I order. The Holy War begins in a few hours. We march on the Underdark. All eyes turn to Commander Jack. Jack hesitates. A campaign of this scale requires consultation with the bishops. I agree and leave, knowing a poorly planned assault would lead to disaster. Once I depart, the captains whisper, "How did the Duke obtain such a map? It's suspicious. He's fallen to corruption. This must be a trap by the evil faction." Jack silences them. Scout teams move out. If the map is accurate, we strike the evil forces. The captains obey. Jack stares at the map, determined to weaken the enemy regardless of my true motives. Minutes later, system announcement, SSS rank Church quest released. Players may join the Holy War at any Church of Light. Empty. The Church of Light is mobilizing global players to purge the Underdark. Quest: kill dark elves, mind flayers, and cultists. Rewards: gold, resources, and contribution points. Requirements: non-evil faction, Tier 2 Lord, 10,000 plus troops. I am unsurprised. The Church's reaction was predictable. They excluded me from leadership due to suspicion, which suits me perfectly. I have no intention of protecting these paladins during the high-casualty conflict. I am using them as cannon fodder and a distraction to shield myself from the wrath of the Underdark gods. The Church opens portals to the Underdark. Many of these tunnels were previously unknown. Players prepare for battle. System announcement: the Holy War has begun. Use town portals to enter the Underdark. Players and Church armies flood the tunnels. I lead my forces through a portal to Taiwanasi's dungeon. The young vampire wakes up, her red eyes brightening at my arrival. I ask if she is ready. She acts haughty, complaining about the wait. I know her personality is unreliable, but she is essential to my plan. I order Layla to cast Shadow Mist and begin the march. Vivian cannot use her powers on the main plane without exposing her identity. Taiwanasi is alone, as her own troops are too weak to be useful. My army includes church priests, so I cannot risk using demons. Taiwanasi's high bloodline disguise is perfect, even against gods. I don't need her to fight. I just need the cover of her shadow mist. Half an hour later, they reach a mid-sized dark elf city. It is heavily fortified with diamond and legendary grade towers. Conquering it would mean fighting the dark elves' gods. I have no interest in occupation, only in looting the resource hub. I plan to steal the resources and let the church take the blame. A massive explosion rocks the city as the walls crumble. I signal the charge. Dragon breath paralyzes the city's defenses. Golden dragons smash the remaining towers into dust. Sky Knights, Lucky Gamblers, and Flame Sharpshooters launch a relentless assault. System: you destroyed a building, gained 1 M contribution points, triggered 10,000 times amplification. System: your troops killed. The Dark Elves are slaughtered instantly. With my buffs, even Crown tier units would fall. Furthermore, my troops are effectively immortal, resurrecting via the Goddess of Death. I let my heroes farm kills while Ina points out the location of the treasury. Lord, the warehouse is there. No rush, I say, eyeing the city's tallest structure. A magnificent palace, adorned with glowing gems, stood resplendent even in the dim underground. I sneered. Blood debts must be paid in blood. Ina clenched her fists, moved. Suddenly, dark glowing troops emerged from the city depths. I narrowed my eyes. A massive crowd of dark elves appeared, clad in sharp, obsidian-black armor reflecting cold light. They were packed densely, countless in number. I cast a scout spell, revealing their stats. Description: elite troops of Purple Agate City, masters of dark magic. They were Tier 13 Crown tier units, top tier among their kind. Their gear slots were full, 3 legendary items, and 1 mythical. They provided 80% physical defense, 50% damage reduction, and boosted magic stats. Useless to me, but formidable. Their weapons granted 60% dark attack and a chance to blind enemies. The mythical gear ensured morale stayed maxed, preventing routes, and boosted attack by 200%. These were elite, level 80 troops numbering in the tens of millions. They could easily challenge the main forces of the current holy war. Their leader, a grim dark elf with viper-like eyes, glared at Ina. So, the heretic returns with a human lackey? Ina tightened her grip on my hand. I patted her head, whispering, "Don't get angry at a corpse." I unleashed a barrage of damage, causing the leader's eyes to widen. As a city lord and elder of a major family, he wasn't as foolish as the poison cult priests. He immediately activated his survival skill. His mythical armor generated a shield absorbing 1 billion damage for 5 minutes. He ordered his troops to unleash AoE attacks around him. I nodded in approval. The veteran leader had reacted perfectly in under a second. I snapped my fingers. My Shadow Phantom assassins were instantly encased in holy light shields. I had pre-equipped them with this mythical gear before entering. The invincibility skill was now active. A rain of dark arrows engulfed the assassins. Their health bars didn't budge. I ordered a full-scale assault. The Dark Elves unleashed a hail of dark arrows. Asterisk ding. Ding. Asterisk minimal damage registered on the arcane golems. The Dark Elf generals stared in disbelief. I smirked. With my buffs and gear, even elite attacks were pathetic. The Dark Elves deployed their Dark Shield Guards, Tier 12 legendary tanks. Their skill, Lifelink Shield, created a barrier based on lost HP, triggering every 20% health lost. They also possessed a resurrection mechanic, allowing them to survive at 0% HP for a minute before recovering 25%. They could trigger this 6 times, making them incredibly annoying, but not to me. My eyes glowed with brilliant azure arcane light. Ding! You have silenced skill. The magic network connection for the Dark Shield Guards vanished. The generals were stunned. What was this power? Without their skills, the guards were trash. I knew they relied on the Goddess of Magic's network. They could have used the Dark Goddess's network, but this wasn't her territory. I ordered my Dragon Legion to carpet bomb the area. The battle was decided. Meanwhile, the Shadow Phantom assassins whittled down the city lord. The lord screamed, "Great Witch Glories, save your servant." Everyone froze. I recognized the name, while Taiwanasi turned bright red with rage. "Don't mention that bitch," she spat, gathering terrifying energy. She unleashed a dark red explosion upon the lord. The energy consumed everything. I recalled who Glories was. A daughter of the Demon King, Taiwanasi's half-sister, and a succubus known as the Deceiver. I remarked, "Your family drama is complicated," Taiwanasi hissed. "I have nothing to do with her." I turned to the near-dead lord. His armor was shattered, his body broken. I mocked. "Did you really think the Deceiver would save you?" The lord roared and fired a mythical-grade dark projectile. A suicide attack dealing 30 billion damage, aimed at Ina. I shielded her, taking the hit. Damage, 0, my passive skill nullified it. The Lord stared in utter disbelief. He collapsed, dead. Ding. Purple Agate City morale minus 50%. Ding. Holy War reward. 500k basic resources. I was stunned. The Church of Light was incredibly stingy for a mythical tier kill. I was annoyed that the Lord had committed suicide, denying me a proper kill reward. I could still loot the body. Taiwanasi coughed, breaking the moment. I realized I was still holding Ina, who looked at me with sweet, adoring eyes. Aware of the onlookers, she whispered, "Lord, thank you." I patted her head and approached the corpse to loot. I looted the remains, triggering 10,000 times amplification repeatedly to gain massive resources, multiple recruitment permissions, and new building blueprints. A system warning alerted me that the Dark Elf faction's favorability was extremely low, making recruited units highly prone to rebellion. I was surprised. As a major city lord, the boss dropped far more than expected, including rare unit recruitment rights. I had obtained over a dozen recruitment permissions, all tied to new, unlockable recruitment buildings. Attributing this luck to the goddess of luck, I noted these drops ranged from Tier 6 units to the Crown Tier ranged units I had just fought. However, I handed these permissions to Taiwanasi, knowing that if I, Yi Mingzhu, or Zi Qiangwei tried to recruit them, the units would immediately rebel. Even if suppressed, their loyalty would be negligible. Taiwanasi's eyes widened at the sight of the permissions, as her dungeon desperately needed troops. Following the city lord's death, the morale of the remaining Dark Elf forces plummeted significantly. Despite the morale drop, the defenders remained united against the invader. I, having no intention of total annihilation, used the chaos to reach the warehouse. I breached the massive, enchanted stone gate within minutes. System notifications confirmed the capture of the warehouse, yielding billions in wood, iron, stone, food, and crystals. With 10,000 times amplification, the haul skyrocketed to quadrillions of each resource. I raised an eyebrow as I collected various high-quality equipment drops. The resource yield was substantial. Ignoring the finer details of the loot, I led my troops away under the cover of shadow mist. The frustrated Dark Elves could only watch, unable to penetrate the defenses of my units. They were left helpless as I retreated with the spoils. Even my delicate-looking elven units possessed absurd defensive stats that rendered the Dark Elves' legendary units ineffective. The Dark Elves were left bewildered by the sheer power of the monsters they had encountered. 10 minutes later, a massive Dark Elf army arrived at Purple Agate City. Their leader, Floris, recoiled at the sight of the ruined city gate. The city was littered with corpses. Countless Dark Elf soldiers lay dead across the ground. Surviving generals reported that City Lord Andrus was dead, blaming a duke from the Church of Light. Floris, a legion commander from one of the 4 great families, seethed with rage. He declared that their family and their goddess, Lolth, were aware of the tragedy and would retaliate immediately. He vowed that the Church of Light would not leave the underground alive. The Dark Elves prepared for war, invoking their deity, Lolth. Nearby, the Church of Light had established a base for the Holy War. Paladins rushed to inform Commander Jack of the crisis. They reported a massive mobilization of at least 10 billion elite Dark Elves, including many Crown Tier units. Jack was stunned. He questioned why the notoriously selfish and fractured Dark Elf families would suddenly unite. Previously, they only fought when their interests were threatened. Jack had intended to target evil factions, not the Dark Elves. Deciding not to overthink it, Jack ordered his Holy War forces to consolidate their defenses and prepare for a decisive battle. This conflict was entirely orchestrated by me. Taiwanasi had subverted the city generals to frame the Church of Light for the destruction, successfully inciting the Dark Elves' wrath. Jack, though a count, held a unique status in the Church of Light as a protege of the God of Light. This holy war was historic, involving over a dozen legion commanders and billions of paladins. Reinforcements were pouring through the portals, and their numbers would soon multiply. The 9 great temples also mobilized in response to the God of Light's call. The Temple of War was the first to arrive, sending terrifying, battle-hardened troops to the front lines. I planned to let the Church and the Dark Elves destroy each other while I reaped the rewards, leaving the cleanup to the 9 great temples. Satisfied, I moved toward the next city. Half an hour later, I captured another warehouse, securing another massive haul of resources. Ding! You triggered 10,000 times amplification, obtaining wood 6.3 quadrillion, iron 5.7 quadrillion, stone 6.62 quadrillion, food 12.3 quadrillion, and crystals 250 trillion. System notifications flooded in as I looted resources. I used the portal to transfer everything to the Kent Kingdom, crushed an immortal-grade speed scroll, and fled. The Dark Elves were left stunned. They were furious, feeling as though their ancestral foundations had been hollowed out by my hit-and-run tactics. 3 hours later, I exhaled. I had successfully plundered 13 cities. The goddess of space effortlessly bypassed the defensive spells on the city warehouses that I otherwise couldn't open. Though these were smaller cities, the haul was massive. I decided to stop. The major Dark Elf families were mobilizing, and Taiwanasi warned that their gods were intervening. I saw no need to waste time fighting them yet. I would let them bleed against the 9 great churches first, then strike when the time was right. I turned my attention to the northeast on the map. I recalled the Duergar, a large underground race. Duergar are an evil race and natural enemies of the dwarves. I needed a massive slave population, laborers who don't occupy territory population slots. Once enslaved by mind flayers, the Duergar retained deep-seated submissive traits despite their recent independence. They were perfect for labor. As I departed, a beautiful woman appeared, Glories. She licked her lips, watching me, and whispered to her stupid sister that she hoped I was strong enough to survive the coming doom. The city of Grey Dwarves was half the size of the City of Light. Duergar are master builders, possessing high construction skills from birth. Much of the city was underground, making it larger than it appeared. I disliked the drab, gray aesthetic. I ordered my dragon legion to attack, their dragon breath raining down upon the city. Accustomed to constant threats, the Duergar immediately took up defensive positions. They relied on their mythical grade walls, which had allowed them to survive the mind flayers previously. To their horror, their prideful walls began to vanish. The Faceless was consuming them. The Duergar attacked in a frenzy, but the Faceless remained unscathed. Suddenly, a massive, 30-meter-tall energy construct erupted from the city. It was a Duergar wielding a strange short sword and a small round shield. I used my scout spell. It was a divine descent, as expected. The god of Duergar possessed various offices, but his primary role was as the racial god of the Duergar. Seeing his followers being slaughtered, the god panicked. Without his followers, he would lose all faith value. He went all out, buffing his kin with divine arts. I remained calm. A divine descent was no match for my forces. I signaled Taiwanasi. The petite girl appeared above the god, wielding a giant battle axe. She swung it down with a thunderous crash. The impact deafened the onlookers. The god of Duergar was sent flying, smashing through buildings. Dust filled the air as the Duergar watched in shock. Their god had been beaten by a little girl. Their faith shattered. Taiwanasi, a mythical Tier 9 entity nearing immortality, easily overpowered the mythical Tier 6 avatar. Suddenly, a dark portal opened nearby. I identified it as a gateway from the abyss, likely connected to the mind flayers. Glories appeared, mocking me with a gift, then vanished. I realized this was an opportunity. Mind flayers dropped rare items that permanently increased mental stats. I gathered my troops and cast Shadow Mist. The city was shrouded in fog, and the Duergar felt a familiar, chilling presence, the mind flayers. My troops repositioned. I waited by the portal as the mind flayer army marched through. They emerged, confused by the fog. Seeing the chaos and the battered Duergar, the mind flayer leaders realized they had been lured into a trap. The Duergar have indeed clashed with the Church of Light, hoping to profit from the chaos. I led my troops through the portal. As the light faded, the system chimed. Ding! You have discovered a new map. As the first player to do so, you are rewarded with 1 million reputation. I surveyed the mind flayer lair, a bizarre, eerie city. The architecture was shrouded in a hazy, pale purple mist, obscuring everything. The system warned. You have stared for over 3 seconds. You are under mental attack. Due to your high spirit, you are immune. I realized the city was rigged with traps to kill those with low mental resistance. In my past life, Mind Flayers exploited the demon invasion to enslave humans using mental powers. Remembering the mass abductions, I ordered an immediate assault. Dragons unleashed their dragon breath, catching the Mind Flayers, who hadn't been attacked in millennia, completely off guard. They were shocked that anyone dared attack, especially given their immortal-grade defensive artifact capable of turning mythical-grade mages into idiots. As the city erupted in explosions, the system logged thousands of kills. Faceless units teleported to the walls to defend. Under spatial fluctuations, buildings began vanishing into thin air. I sneered at their attempt to counterattack. I decided to raid their home instead, though I remained cautious not to stray too far from the portal. I kept heavy guards at the portal to ensure a safe retreat, deploying only my dragons and faceless units. Riding Sylvia, I began looting the corpses. The 10,000 times amplification system triggered repeatedly. I collected spirit orbs of various grades, which provided permanent spirit boosts. These items could elevate a warrior's mental stats to rival those of mages. I gathered enough to satisfy my heroines, Zi Qiangwei and Yi Mingzhu. Suddenly, the system alerted. You have killed the egg of the first monarch. The Mind Flayers are enraged. Your reputation with them is permanently -200, and they will hunt you relentlessly. Empty. I realized I had killed something significant. I looked toward the city's grandest structure, where frost dragons circled. Beneath them lay colorful loot. I had Sylvia collect them, triggering the 10,000 times amplification on immortal-grade items. I examined the egg of the first monarch, Parasite, an immortal-grade item capable of silently consuming a saint's attributes. It drained 100 intelligence and spirit daily until mental collapse, removable only by gods with divine power level 15+. Empty. I found the black, glowing parasites terrifyingly effective. They were a slow-acting poison for the mind. Even legendary mages would be reduced to despair quickly. While removable by high-level gods, divine power level 15 was an elite threshold. Layla and Stephanie, at levels 2 and 3, were far too weak to counter this. Fewer than 5% of gods reached level 15. Even mythical-grade powerhouses rarely knew such beings. My eyes gleamed with a dangerous idea. I looked forward to finding a test subject. I examined the next item, an immortal-grade Mind Flayer bomb made of purple crystal. It permanently reduced the spirit of all enemies within 10 million yards by 500. Enemies might die or become easily enslaved if their spirit dropped low enough. I held the bomb, impressed. It was perfect for turning enemies into useful slaves. I moved to the final loot item. It was a fragment of a ring belonging to an ancient god of evil spirits, capable of controlling millions. The system's 10,000 times amplification had inflated the required fragments to 10,000. It defied the laws of conservation. I initiated the synthesis. Black shards swirled with mysterious purple light. Seconds later, the synthesis was complete. The resulting immortal-grade ring had a single, ambiguous skill, a chance to maximize a target's favorability. I was skeptical. An immortal artifact with a vague, one-time skill felt like a scam. Dismissing it, I ordered my troops to retreat through the portal back to the Underdark. Once through, I immediately ordered the destruction of the portal to prevent pursuit. 10 minutes later, enraged Mind Flayer elites arrived, blaming the Church of Light for the massacre. I, indifferent, watched the god of Duergar battle a giant Mind Flayer. The little girl returned to me, her dress torn and her health bar depleted by a quarter. I used an immortal-grade recovery scroll to restore the girl's health. She bristled at my sarcasm, revealing she had been hiding to let the Mind Flayers and Duergar fight each other. As expected, the two factions clashed immediately upon meeting. I observed the battlefield, noting that the god of Duergar had shrunk significantly due to the loss of divine power. However, the mythical-grade Mind Flayer struggled to overcome me. The god of Duergar had protected his people from enslavement for years, proving his strength. Specifically, he possessed near-total immunity to mental magic. Conversely, Mind Flayers relied heavily on magic and lacked physical durability. Seeing the god of Duergar fail to even scratch the Mind Flayer, I grew impatient with their pathetic struggle. I ordered my troops to focus fire. The sudden appearance of my army from the shadow mist shocked both combatants, and the god of Duergar's health bar plummeted instantly. As the god of Durgar wailed, I delivered the finishing blow, causing the deity's body to explode into dissipating energy. The system announced the kill and the 10,000 times amplification. I ignored the notification, turning my attention to the mythical mind flayer. When it demanded to know if I killed the first monarch's egg, I declared righteously, "Indeed, I am the Duke of the Church of Light." I added, "Evil mind flayer, the great god of light shall purify you." Tayawanasi twitched at my hypocrisy. She realized I was far more cunning than her, successfully shifting all blame onto the Church of Light. I didn't wait for a response, ordering an immediate assault. The mind flayer was obliterated within seconds. Tayawanasi was horrified, realizing my output far exceeded anything her dungeon could produce. Combined with 8,861, with their god dead, the Durgar's morale collapsed completely. I confronted their leaders, offering a choice: death or slavery with the promise of food. The leaders, fueled by indignation rather than fear, rejected my offer. They refused to return to the life of slavery they had endured under the mind flayers. They vowed to die rather than submit. The Durgar prepared to fight to the death. I sneered. I decided to grant their wish, tossing an immortal-grade item into their midst. A pale purple energy engulfed the city, leaving the Durgar dazed. Despite their resistance to mental magic, they were unprepared for this. Combined with 8872, the immortal-grade soul bomb reduced the city's population by 70%. The survivors were left catatonic, their fighting spirit extinguished. Stunned by the weapon's power, I signaled Sylvia, whose dragon roar terrified the remaining Durgar into immediate surrender. The system confirmed the surrender of 35 billion Durgar. I sighed in relief, having secured a massive workforce. I opened portals to the Shadow Realm, ordering the dazed leaders to march their people through. With the Durgar problem solved, I turned my sights toward my next target. I had successfully manipulated the Dark Elves into a war against the good faction. Combined with 8,879, Tayawanasi had mentioned that Glories possessed a massive Black Dragon Legion. I vowed to settle the score for her betrayal. I left the city, heading toward the coordinates of the massive army gathered by the Church of Light. Players at the front lines were awestruck by the scale of the army, noting the presence of countless Crown Tier units equipped with mythical gear. Combined with 8,883, they believed the good faction would finally win, though many were anxious about the absence of the Night Demon. Combined with 8,885, combined with 8,885, combined with 8885, the Dragon Kingdom players had grown significantly under my influence. Combined with 8,889, commanders and priests gathered to discuss the war map. They noted that Lolth herself was leading the Dark Elf forces. Since her divine avatar had been killed by the Night Demon, her power was weakened. The Temple of War Priest urged an immediate attack to capitalize on this. Combined with 8,894, the Moonlight Church priest interrupted, reporting sightings of the deceiver, Glories. The room fell silent. Glories was a notorious Demon King's daughter known for her manipulative nature. The Temple of War priest dismissed the threat, labeling her a mere demigod-level succubus. The others remained skeptical. They feared her penchant for underhanded schemes, knowing she was likely plotting something treacherous. Jack sighed. "We have to take it one step at a time, but our Holy War army still holds the advantage." I couldn't care less about the Holy War. To me, both the good and evil factions were enemies if they stood in the way of me claiming a floating island. Floating islands are coveted by all gods. Their unique defense systems make a god's divine kingdom virtually invincible. I intended to sow chaos and sabotage both factions. With this in mind, I led my troops forward. I ventured deep into the Underdark. Rumors suggested that beneath the Underdark lay an even more expansive space. This region was treacherous, filled with unknown, terrifying creatures. I found a massive chasm in the ground and led my troops inside. Warning: you have entered a highly dangerous special map. Stay alert. Warning: due to unknown reasons, all your units take 200 non-elemental magic damage per second. The system notification faded. Gray damage numbers floated above my troops' heads. The air in this second layer of the Underdark was thick with violent, damaging energy. While the damage increased with depth, it was negligible to my troops. I pressed on through the pitch-black darkness. Warning, you have entered a highly dangerous special map. Stay alert. Warning, due to unknown reasons, all your units take 3,000 non-elemental magic damage per second. I had reached the third layer of the Underdark. This level of damage would instantly wipe out players and most powerful NPC troops. My troops, however, barely lost a single hit point. After 10 minutes, I spotted a stealthy group ahead and cast a scout spell. The group consisted of elite Church of Darkness members, including archmages, legion commanders, and a saintess, all mythical grade. Among them was Tion De Se, whom I had nearly forgotten. As the first player to join the evil faction, he was formidable, but I had already taught him a lesson once before. I recalled our previous encounter. I had killed Tion De Se with a single blow. Suddenly, a terrifying, mysterious aura erupted from the saintess. The dark goddess had descended. She scanned the area, sensing an unseen gaze, but her detection spells yielded nothing. Dismissing it as paranoia, she led the church members forward. They traveled for 10 minutes without incident. The dark goddess's presence kept the Underdark's monsters at bay. The air suddenly turned thick and foul. Warning, you have been affected by an extremely evil entity. Your luck minus 1,000. Warning, due to unknown reasons, all your units' movement speed minus 20%. I watched as the Church of Darkness group came to a halt. Before them stood a primitive cage made of withered branches. I recognized it immediately. Inside, a pair of hateful, blood-red eyes stared out from a void-like body. I cast a scout spell. It was one of the 3 ancient evil gods, a devourer of divine power, imprisoned by the creator god in an astral cage. Grade, immortal. Level. Stats were all hidden. No wonder my luck had plummeted. This creature was at the peak of the immortal rank. Even a level 19 god would be helpless against it. The dark goddess reached out, drawing dark energy from the cage. Tayawanasi gasped. She's absorbing the evil god's power. I nodded. That explains how she maintains her divine power level. A cold smirk played on my lips. His time was up. I pulled a simple, withered twig from my bag. I sneered and crept forward through the shadow mist. A crisp snap echoed through the chamber. World announcement. Warning. The evil god has broken its seal. It is extremely powerful. Players must stay away. The church members froze as a wave of viscous, hateful energy flooded the space. A black streak of light burst from the cage. A dark mist flashed, followed by a sharp cry. The dark goddess was gone, leaving behind only the mangled corpse of the saintess. The church members were paralyzed with terror. The dark goddess, one of the universe's most powerful entities, had been killed instantly, even in her divine descent form. The black streak tore through the remaining members, wiping their health bars instantly. Before I could react, a mysterious spatial fluctuation teleported my troops away. It was the goddess of space. She sounded uncharacteristically angry. You are playing with fire. No god can handle that evil god. Just keep us safe. The universe falling into chaos is none of my business. The goddess of space sighed, accepting that I was safe for now. She knew that as long as she could run, we could survive anywhere in the universe. Other goddesses hurriedly retreated into their divine kingdoms, terrified to leak even a trace of their presence. Beside me, Tayawanasi trembled, snapping, "Are you trying to get me killed?" The ancient evil god had few rivals in the universe, but I merely shrugged, knowing exactly what I was doing. I understood the ancient evil god's nature and habits well, having encountered it in my past life after it escaped the astral cage. It fed exclusively on divine power, showing no interest in anything else. Its power was terrifying. Weaklings like Layla would be swallowed whole without a second thought. Furthermore, it harbored a deep grudge against the dark goddess, naturally drawing it toward the Church of Darkness. I ruffled Tayawanasi's hair and said, "Forget it. Let's go find your sister." Bite. Tayawanasi bit my palm in frustration. Sister? She wanted nothing to do with that *TCH. A thunderous world announcement echoed, silencing the world. Players were bewildered. They had no knowledge of the 3 ancient evil gods, as they weren't part of the official lore. Unaware of the danger, the players felt no fear. Haha, my chance to rise. If we can kill an ancient evil god, the rewards will be insane. Sakura Kingdom players, assemble. Stop fighting the evil faction. The Church of Light is just using us as cannon fodder. Yura, Bear Kingdom players, go find this evil god. Night Demon isn't here, probably died in the B-City explosion. It's our time to shine. Lacking reverence, players began fantasizing about the loot they would claim after killing the creature. However, the longtime inhabitants of the Lost Continent were panicked. In the Gods chat group, who let this mad dog out? We're doomed. Seal your divine kingdoms. Is it really that strong? Open yours and find out. The God Eater is the most terrifying of the three, a message warned. When it first appeared, 30% of the universe's gods perished. Seal your kingdoms and pray. The gods checked the Cinder's profile, curious about the arrogant tone. It was the god of war, a veteran with maxed-out divine power levels across generations. His words carried weight. The gods immediately sealed their kingdoms and retreated to the hidden corners of the universe. This mass exodus was spectacular. Sealing a divine kingdom severed all ties to the main plane, leaving believers unable to reach their deities, much like the goddess of poison, who had been unreachable for ages. Meanwhile, commanders on the front lines of the Holy War were stunned by the system announcement. In the Dark Elf lines, a monstrous entity radiated terrifying pressure. Her upper body was that of a stunning, dark-skinned woman with exquisite features. Her lower body, however, was grotesque. It was a hideous spider body with blood-red, barbed legs shimmering with eerie light. This was Lolth, the racial deity of the Dark Elves. Once a high-ranking figure, she had been cast into the Underdark after offending the Elf King, leading to the creation of the Dark Elves. Suddenly, Lolth frowned, sensing a bizarre aura. A black shadow flashed toward her with impossible speed, accompanied by a canine-like howl. Lolth. Before the eyes of the horrified crowd, a black, dog-like creature wreathed in darkness lunged at Lolth. It clamped its jaws onto one of her spider legs. Ah! Lolth shrieked as her massive leg was torn clean off. The creature swallowed the limb in one gulp. A mysterious light flashed, and the God Eater's body swelled hundreds of times in size. It then shrank back, though it remained significantly larger than before. The onlookers were paralyzed with fear. Lolth was a powerful deity manifesting in her true form. Her body was composed of high-density divine power, lethal to any mortal who dared touch it. Even gods handled divine power crystals with extreme caution. This evil god had eaten her raw. Lolth, furious, realized the lost divine power would take centuries to recover. Enraged, she attempted to use a space spell to escape. Having heard legends of the God Eater, she knew it fed on divine power, making any magical attack only serve to strengthen it. Suddenly, her expression shifted to pure rage. She roared, "Goddess of Space." Her space spells were locked. The Goddess of Space had intervened. After digesting the power, the God Eater grew even larger, its ominous aura intensifying. It drooled black ichor, staring greedily at Lolth. On the other side of the line, players tried to use Scout, but the system intervened. Ding! You are too close. Your luck minus 2,000. Ding! Your neutral and evil units' morale and loyalty minus 200. They are about to mutiny. The players were stunned. A 2,000-point luck reduction? Initial luck was only around 10. They were now deep in the negatives. Many thought of Aoshi Wuxuang and shuddered. They'd rather die than end up like him. The battlefield descended into chaos as non-good units turned hostile. The Holy War forces watched in horror. Seeing the carnage, many gods fled. The goddess of magic, who had only joined due to my threats, immediately sealed her kingdom. The god of war, despite his earlier bravado, retreated without looking back. Lacking any moral compass, the gods abandoned the Holy War. Only the Church of Light and the Church of Justice remained. In the distant cosmos, the God of Light and the God of Justice were furious. Who released this seal? The God of Justice demanded. The God of Light sighed. Whoever it was, we must seal it again. I ignored the battlefield, leading my troops toward another part of the Underdark. Sylvia looked uncharacteristically serious. I teased, nervous? Sylvia jumped, nearly biting her tongue. Who's nervous? I smiled. I knew how to interpret her tsundere nature. Black dragons are different. They've survived for ages and have fortified their nests for millennia. So, I said coldly, we'll just kill anyone who resists. Sylvia's eyes widened, but she nodded solemnly. Meanwhile, in a deep, dark dungeon, Glory sat on her throne, her eyes cold as she watched the flickering magic lamps. To think he could release the God-Eater, this human causing chaos across the universe, is not to be underestimated. Glory's dismissed the battlefield, confident in her trump card, the Black Dragon King. She believed the Black Dragon race, bound by a trade, would tear me to shreds, as even an ancient demon king wouldn't dare provoke them. P.S. The author is currently hospitalized with a fever. Please excuse the brief delay. I led my troops into the Underdark, where the air grew scorching with a destructive, soul-chilling heat. I had reached the Black Dragon Lair. Rumored to be deeper than the lowest levels of the Underdark, this cavern was carved out by the Dragon God using spatial powers. I had the goddess of space teleport my troops directly into the pitch-black, sweltering depths. I cast a scout spell, revealing numerous ancient Dragon Empire defensive structures. These structures were still functional, pulsating with terrifying, concentrated energy. I immediately ordered my troops to focus fire and destroy these defenses. Explosions illuminated the cavern, followed by the deafening, enraged roars of countless dragons. The black dragons were stunned that I had bypassed their outer perimeter to reach the lair's heart. As the system notifications flooded my ears, the dragons entered combat mode. They unleashed torrents of scorching dragon breath, filling the underground space. Yet, my troops barely took any damage. The dragons froze, staring with dread at Sylvia's slender figure. How is this possible? Her aura is terrifying. My bloodline is suppressed. Is she a descendant of the dragon god? Impossible. The dragon god's descendants died out 2 millennia ago. The dragons descended into chaos. Panic peaked when Sylvia effortlessly tore a mythical-grade dragon to pieces. Suddenly, a mysterious, vast aura descended. I looked up to see a 100-meter-long behemoth staring down at me from the lair's depths. I cast a scout spell, Black Dragon Royal, extremely powerful. This was the Black Dragon King, an immortal-grade entity capable of challenging gods. The king narrowed its eyes at me. You've caused quite a stir across the continent. Your strength earns my recognition. But this is where it ends. I was baffled. Does this dragon think its recognition matters to me? The Black Dragon King blew a 5-colored horn, triggering a massive, radiant light that spread for hundreds of meters. The system warned, warning, skill activated. It may be summoning the ancient dragon god. The surrounding dragons grew solemn, recognizing the legendary figure who once unified the universe. I was stunned. I watched, choosing not to interrupt, as the Black Dragon King summoned the dragon god. Seconds later, a 5-colored energy wave rippled outward. Next, amidst the dragon's awe, the light coalesced into a terrifying, radiant dragon. Description: the legendary dragon god, creator of the Dragon Empire, rumored to be the strongest in the universe. The dragons cheered, begging the dragon god to destroy the human and the traitorous ice dragon. The Black Dragon King bowed, expecting salvation, but the dragon god simply silenced him. Enough. Ignoring the king, she looked at me. You are moving a bit too fast. The dragons were stunned that I knew the dragon god. I was amused that the king had summoned my own undoing. The dragon god addressed the dragons. From today, the Black Dragon race shall be ruled by my descendant. Do you have objections? The dragons were left speechless. Their minds went blank. The dragon god was siding with me. The dragon god stared coldly at the king. Well, do you refuse? The Black Dragon King snapped, raging. You're no dragon god. How dare you help a human against our race? The dragon god sighed and glanced at me. I activated the dragon's soul in my hand, causing it to glow brilliantly. The system chimed. Unknown cause triggered. Your item has evolved. I was shocked. The dragon god was forcing the dragon's soul to activate. The cavern was flooded with blinding 5-colored light. Under the light, the black dragons shrieked in agony. Their massive bodies dissolved into black energy, melting away. System notifications surged. 10,000 times amplification triggered. Gained black dragon energy. Within 10 seconds, half the dragons vanished. The rest tried to flee, but the five-colored energy net held them fast. Sylvia watched in shock. The dragon soul, it can forcibly convert their life force into energy? I realized the dragon soul had hidden attributes. The dragon god, its creator, knew exactly how to unlock them. Within minutes, the cavern was silent, and the dragon soul was overflowing with energy. The dragon god looked with disdain at the mangled black dragon king. When I created the dragon soul, the black dragons were the most disobedient. I killed hundreds of them back then. The king begged for mercy, offering the race's eternal service. The dragon god looked to me, and I gave a single command: kill. The dragon god complied. System notifications flooded in. 10,000 times amplification triggered. Gained massive black dragon energy. Recruitment permission unlocked. New building unlocked. I breathed a sigh of relief. The dragon god's suppression of the dragon race was absolute. I asked, "Are you still alive?" The dragon god shook her head. When you reach a certain level of power, the concept of life and death ceases to exist. She faded away, leaving me to realize she was likely a lingering remnant of a being beyond death. Back in the dungeon, Glory smiled smugly. The noise has stopped. The battle must be over by now. Subordinates echoed, "Rest assured, Demon King. The Black Dragon King is a mortal grade. Even powerful gods cannot handle it." Glories chuckled, "Stupid humans. The Black Dragon is a race even Demon Kings fear. He thinks he's strong." Suddenly, alarms blared. A succubus stumbled in. "Demon King, the human is attacking the dungeon." Glories was stunned. Dungeons were unique, possessing the universe's strongest concealment. Because their rules differed from the universe's, the goddess of space could not teleport me inside. I didn't need to. Glories' dungeon was level 11, quite high. It was filled with countless crown tier units and dense, lethal traps. For ordinary people, conquering this would be infinitely harder than a human territory. But for me, it was different. Attackers usually had to trigger traps, assuming the walls were durable. Dungeon cores allowed all walls to share HP and defense. This made the walls effectively indestructible. Yet, I ignored such stats as I stared at the entrance. It looked like a gaping maw, flanked by massive skull pillars, reeking of danger. I snapped my fingers. The Faceless teleported to the entrance, surrounding it with strange spatial light. The entrance melted into nothingness. Tayawanasi was horrified. Even at her peak, she could only tie with Glories. A dungeon of this scale was melted instantly. Glories was equally bewildered. Her system spammed. "Your dungeon has been permanently destroyed." Glories was in disbelief. Dungeons were the ultimate defensive bastions created by demon kings. For millennia, even the god of light's holy war armies struggled against them. They could only rely on sheer numbers. Now, it was melting away. She panicked and ordered, "All units, attack. Activate all defenses. Contact the Demon World Chamber of Commerce. I'll pay 100 divine power crystals for help." I advanced slowly, unhurried. With the God Eater causing chaos, no one noticed my actions. The Faceless defense rendered all dungeon traps useless. 10 minutes later, I saw the full scope of the dungeon. It was indeed impressive. It housed beasts, undead, demons, and fallen races, far superior to the little girl's dungeon. Still, even crown tier units couldn't scratch the Faceless. I stopped before the core, which would collapse the dungeon if destroyed. I saw a grim-faced Glories and a slender figure beside her. They locked eyes. I scratched my cheek. It was my old acquaintance, the high-level clerk Cindy. Cindy was stunned. She panicked. My reputation had spread through the demon world. As a god-granted duke, I had forced an ancient demon king to self-destruct on Blue Star. The Demon World Chamber of Commerce deemed me a dangerous opportunist backed by powerful goddesses and Tayawanasi. I looked at Cindy with interest. If she fought, I could plunder the wealthy Chamber of Commerce. Cindy sensed my dangerous gaze and asked Glories, "Your Highness, is this the Duke you want us to fight?" She had brought elite Chamber of Commerce troops. "Duke," Glories retorted, "that little bitch doesn't deserve the title of Demon Princess." Cindy smiled. "Sorry, our rules forbid interfering in wars between Demon King heirs." "No way. Fight me?" Those who opposed me never ended well. She'd rather fight the God of Light. Glories offered. I'll give you 1,000 divine power crystals. That was a massive sum, likely Glory's entire fortune. Still, she refused. I won't break the chamber's rules. Glory's gnashed her teeth. I chuckled. Cindy, how about this? I'll give you 10,000 divine power crystals if you leave the chamber and join me. Cindy froze, then laughed. Duke, don't joke. I sneered. You've planned for thousands of years. Won't you seize this chance? Cindy's heart raced. How did I know about her plans for independence? If the ancient demon kings behind the chamber found out, she was doomed. I had backed her into a corner. That was my intent. Cindy was powerful. In my past life, she had betrayed the chamber. She suppressed her strength to legendary tier 9, but she was already a demigod. I smiled. Can you break your soul contract? Leave the rest to me. Those 3 old bastards. If they dare attack my territory, I'll scatter their ashes. With me, you won't have to live in fear. Cindy clenched her fists. The chamber's control over employees was absolute. She had signed soul contracts with several demon kings, but nothing was absolute in this universe. Cindy gritted her teeth, made her decision, and grabbed a nearby succubus. She used her power to bind the creature tightly. The succubus let out a piercing shriek. I narrowed my eyes. Judging by the magic network fluctuations, it was a tier 9 forbidden spell. Minutes later, Cindy released her grip. The succubus collapsed, her eyes dimming as life faded. Tayawanasi gasped. You swapped the bound soul? I smirked. Want a turn? Tayawanasi fell silent, her own soul still under my control. I opened my palm, releasing a glowing, blood-scented orb. If you want freedom, I'll return it. You. The orb entered the girl, her ruby eyes widening in shock. I had returned her soul entirely, granting her total freedom. She stared at me, suspicious of my motives. I smiled. Follow me, and I'll help you reach godhood, surpassing any peak your vampire clan has ever known. I'll even let you kill your brother yourself. You can rebel, of course, but you know the consequences. I trusted my own judgment over a mere soul contract. Tayawanasi was prideful. Without her brother as leverage, she never would have signed the slave contract. She struggled with the decision. Though she'd known me only a few days, my impact was profound. My terrifying strength had already claimed the lives of countless gods who crossed me. She huffed. If you break your promise, I'll take you down with me. I chuckled. It's just a demon king's son. Cindy and Tayawanasi had effectively defected. Glories, watching from the sidelines, was furious that I was so certain of her defeat. If I knew her thoughts, I would have laughed. It was a foregone conclusion. Cindy and the Demon World Chamber of Commerce forces immediately attacked Glories' units. The troops realized that following Cindy was their only path. Returning to the chamber meant certain execution. I waved my hand, causing a flash of blue light that disrupted the space. Glories gasped in terror. Impossible. You blocked our magic network. Without the network, a succubus was weaker than an epic-grade demon in physical combat. Tayawanasi fared better, as she could burn blood to fuel her magic. Though Glories was a demigod at the peak of mythical grade, she could only bypass the block partially. Her strength plummeted. Cold sweat broke out, and she surrendered. I sneered and signaled Tayawanasi. I had zero interest in a succubus with such a sordid history. Tayawanasi grinned, summoning a massive, mismatched axe. As Glories watched in horror, the axe crashed down. Boom. Dust filled the air. The girl was sent flying, humiliated. I noticed a black, shattered orb in Glories' hand, a life-saving artifact. I signaled Sylvia and Ina, and they launched a fierce assault on the exposed dungeon core. Damn it, Glories cursed. Then, a massive explosion rocked the area. Cindy had thrown a pile of colorful bombs she'd pilfered from the chamber. They ranged from mythical to immortal grade. I twitched. As a high-ranking salesperson, Cindy had access to the chamber's stolen goods. The problem was that if I had destroyed the core myself, I could have triggered 10,000 times amplification. I had made a fortune destroying the previous core. Now, it was all wasted. I shook my head. My resources were already overflowing. The loss was just a number. The explosion left the dungeon in ruins. A deep crater formed, and Glories' ornate dress was shredded. Tayawanasi, eyes burning red, roared, "Die!" Her axe struck again, sending Glories flying. I yawned, losing interest in their brawl. With goddesses watching and the goddess of space present, there was no chance of escape. Cindy knelt before me. Lord, I offer you my soul. I helped her up, no need. Her betrayal of the chamber was proof enough. The chamber was backed by 3 ancient demon kings, far stronger than those on Blue Star. She had no choice but to rely on me, whose territory was untouchable in the main plane. Minutes later, the battle ended. Tayawanasi had cleaved glories in 2. I left the cleanup to the girls. I didn't want to stay underground. My presence would soon attract the good faction. I teleported back to the surface, relieved to be out. Even to Stephanie and Layla, my actions were heart-stopping. I had walked a tightrope, but my boldness paid off. I had plundered the Dark Elves' resources, leaving them unable to feed their population. They would have to raid the surface, but I didn't care. They couldn't touch my territory. I also gained a massive workforce of Durgar slaves. Once moved to the floating island, they would be productive workers. I also gained a new crown tier unit, the Black Dragon. Only the Red Dragon remained. Sylvia could sense them, but their coordinates were constantly shifting. I planned to drop the floating island directly on them. I placed the Black Dragon recruitment building and checked its stats. Description: born in scorching lands, masters of dragon magic. Even hatchlings possess terrifying breath. Level: 1. Attack: 1350 to 1480. Defense: 460. Tier: 14. Race: Dragon. HP: 220k. Skills: 1. Dragon Body, LV max 50% physical damage reduction, 50% magic resistance. 2. Destructive Dragon Breath, LV 1 fire damage equal to 30x magic attack, hits up to 100k targets. Cooldown: 10 minutes. 3. Overlimit Excitation, LV max allows breath skills to be used continuously up to 10 times for 2 hours. Cooldown: 24 hours. 4. Scorching Body, LV1 passive, deals 20x magic attack damage per second to enemies within 300 yards. Morale: 200. Loyalty: max. Black dragons consume 200,000 food daily, functioning as the mages of the dragon race. Their level 1 dragon breath has an off-the-charts damage coefficient, capable of hitting 100,000 enemies, 10 times that of other dragons. Their burst potential is absurd, allowing for 10 consecutive dragon breath releases in an instant, capable of world-ending destruction. I crushed a dark skill book found in the Dragon Empire ruins, enveloping all my black dragons in a black glow. The skill, at max level, reflects the Black Dragon Elder's legacy as the Dragon Empire's elite mages, who enhance their breath through magical research. Effect: increases Black Dragon breath range, damage, and target count by 500%. I smirked. The Black Dragons were truly obsessed with their breath. Unlike the Frost Dragons, their skill book focused exclusively on enhancing this single ability. Regardless, the passive stats were terrifying. Combined with burst skills, 10 consecutive breaths could likely wipe out even the City of Light. Everything was ready. I gazed at my massive army, feeling a surge of excitement. No player in my past life had ever reached this level. With my stat bonuses, I could crush every human empire on the Lost Continent. I delayed attacking the floating island, as it was an unknown map filled with interdimensional monsters ranging from Tier 1 to Crown Tier. I needed to wait for key skill cooldowns. These burst skills and equipment were my trump cards. I spent 2 days farming, while the hourglass of time accelerated my cooldowns. Meanwhile, the God Eater's emergence threw the universe into chaos. The God of Light and the God of Justice failed to stop the God Eater, who instead consumed their divine power. Gods everywhere lived in fear of the Mad Dog, invading their divine kingdoms. The good faction sought ways to reseal it, reportedly consulting the Angel King. Human affairs were equally chaotic, with guild wars and nation wars erupting. The Aoshi Guild was near collapse under pressure from the Shinji Alliance and Rose. No one dared to join them. The death of Zhanhu and Wuqing left the War Soul Guild in total disarray. I was surprised to see Eve back on the personal leaderboard. I resolved to kill her permanently next time. My army gathered, accompanied by a battle-ready Yi Mingzhu. Having moved past her trauma, Yi Mingzhu had become more cheerful, especially around me. Her army was massive, bolstered by hundreds of recruitment permissions. I ordered them to move out. The portal to floating island number 3 was located near a volcano in the Furnace of Destruction. The Furnace of Destruction was perilous, inhabited by numerous evil gods. These were genuine immortal-grade entities, though I remained unbothered by these weak gods. They were too weak to establish their own divine kingdoms, hence their residence in this wasteland. They likely coveted the Furnace of Destruction, an immortal artifact left by the Creator God, though true powerful gods knew such dreams were futile. The furnace was designed by the Creator to execute immortal-grade units. When the Creator used it to execute thousands of immortals, their overflowing soul energy corrupted the site. I ignored the local monsters, using a scroll of haste. Layla cast a spell, creating dozens of illusions for every unit to confuse the enemy. These phantoms were indistinguishable to anything below immortal grade. I ordered a full-speed advance. Deep within the area, a figure composed of magical energy and bound by chains floated in the air. This was the god of liches, the world's most powerful lich. Combined with 9235, a demon lord knelt, asking the god of liches to fulfill his promise to the demon king. The god of liches scoffed at the idea of Clark, fearing a mere human lord. The demon lord suppressed his killing intent. Clark was Taiwanasi's brother and the mastermind behind the Eastern Undead. Though the Demon King's sons were only demigods, their physical presence in the main plane made them feared by gods. The god of liches promised that no one would leave the Furnace of Destruction alive. He intended to claim the secrets of the arcane empire from me. My army entered the depths, encountering max-level legendary units equipped with mythical-grade gear. With my buffs, I could handle them, but I chose to avoid unnecessary conflict. Using Shadow Mist, my army remained invisible to even Crown-tier units. Suddenly, I stopped as the ground cracked, revealing a dog-headed guardian holding a trident. The guardian emitted a pressure greater than any god I had encountered. I used a scout spell. The guardian was a level 200 immortal-grade divine envoy created by the Creator God. Combined with 9248, divine envoys were the most devout petitioners, sent to the main plane to convey their god's will. I had met other envoys before. I was familiar with the envoys of Stephanie and Layla, but an envoy of the Creator God was unprecedented. The fact that this envoy was immortal grade was shocking. The Creator's rules usually forbade immortals from staying long in the main plane. The envoy's name was a mere number. I realized with dread that the Creator might possess hundreds of such immortal envoys. Stephanie and Layla were equally terrified. To gods, the Creator was the ultimate, fearful authority whose rules defined their existence. I stared at the Creator God's envoy. The gray nameplate indicated a neutral stance. The envoy wouldn't attack unless provoked. Could I really just give up after all my efforts for the floating island? I gritted my teeth, refusing to retreat. I had fought my way back to life to reach the pinnacle of this world. I wouldn't cower before a mere envoy of the Creator God. With my resolve hardened, I decided to challenge the envoy head-on. I asked the goddesses if they would join my madness. They all agreed, though their responses varied from stoic to enthusiastic, leaving me momentarily stunned. Ignoring the odd atmosphere, I felt the goddesses' presence descend upon me. The system chimed repeatedly. The goddesses had performed divine descent and applied their highest-level divine arts to my entire army. These were ultimate techniques, usually reserved for a god's final stand, as the recovery times spanned centuries. The sheer scale of the divine power was overwhelming. The goddess of magic suddenly demanded to know what I was doing. She was furious. I carried her supreme blessing, and my actions would implicate her as my patron. Ignoring her, I unleashed my artifact, radiating intense killing intent. The envoy's eyes widened in shock at the human's audacity. The envoy was stunned that a mortal dared to defy the Creator God, especially with such powerful divine backing. Sneering at the loss of reverence in the main plane, the envoy's ID turned blood red as he swung his trident. A massive damage figure of 10 trillion appeared, accompanied by a deafening shockwave that shook the heavens. Nearby, the god of liches and other deities watched in utter disbelief. They were terrified. I had actually declared war on the Creator God's envoy. Even the undead god of liches felt his mind reel at the night demon's sheer recklessness. They immediately considered fleeing. A human challenging the Creator God was suicide. They exchanged glances, silently agreeing to escape. If the creator god grew angry, even the dark goddess would be reduced to nothingness. I was shocked by the envoy's damage, which could have killed Layla hundreds of times over. I was relieved to see the dragon soul's barrier hold. The envoy remarked in surprise that I possessed an immortal-grade artifact, noting their development exceeded expectations. I sneered and activated my buffs. As my army unleashed a barrage of attacks, I noticed the envoy's health bar dropping slowly despite his overwhelming power. Thanks to the Heart of Slaughter, the envoy's high defense and damage reduction were rendered useless. 5 minutes later, the envoy's health was depleted. The system warned that killing the envoy might incite the creator god's wrath. I exhaled, relieved to have survived. My companions, Stephanie, Layla, and Lynn, looked on in stunned silence. The goddess of magic, however, was silently cursing Yi Fan for dragging her into this mess. I felt no regret. I looted the corpse, triggering 10,000 times amplification, and obtained the highest level authority for the Furnace of Destruction. Suddenly, hostile auras surrounded me. The deities emerged, mocking me for killing the creator god's envoy and demanding the artifacts. I remained calm as the time stop effect ended. The deities had arrived at the perfect moment. My Heart of Slaughter required me to kill immortal-grade units. The god of liches opened a portal, summoning a legion of undead. Ghostly liches in tattered robes drifted out, radiating a bone-chilling aura. Liches. I used my scout spell. These were elite crown tier units, confirming the god of liches alliance with Clark. These were high-level, tier 13 units. They were formidable, possessing complete immunity to physical damage. They also relied on phylacteries to resurrect if destroyed. More portals opened, revealing massive, dark legions. I scanned the incoming armies, noting their terrifying pressure. Greed for the loot had driven these deities to deploy their most elite forces. They held back their divine units to avoid detection by the creator god, but these crown tier troops were their prized possessions. The god of liches offered me a final chance. Serve him and gain eternal life. The system prompted me with the offer to be transformed into a powerful lich. I found the offer absurd. I was already on the path to godhood. I didn't need such a pathetic form of immortality. Becoming a lich meant losing my humanity. I would lose the ability to enjoy life's pleasures or be with my wives. I laughed, telling the god of liches I had no intention of leaving my wives as widows. My companions reacted with a mix of shyness and annoyance, well aware of my Crystal Palace lifestyle. I openly mocked the god of liches, who, having sacrificed his humanity for immortality, was left seething with impotent rage. Under my pitying gaze, the god of liches' aura turned deathly cold. "You're courting death," the god of liches roared. I ignored him, triggering a mechanism. Suddenly, the ground beneath the gods and their armies erupted violently. Crimson magma surged like living, blood-red hands, instantly enveloping the entire enemy force. The gods stood frozen, horrified by the hellish scene unfolding before them. In a single second, all their max-level crown tier units were annihilated. Panic rippled through the gods. Impossible. Is this the Furnace of Destruction? How did you activate it? You fool. If the furnace is active, we're all doomed. Before they could despair further, the flames coalesced into a terrifying, multi-thousand-meter-tall giant. Its fists swept through the air, leaving a trail of fire as it struck. Massive damage numbers, -500 quadrillion, flashed repeatedly as the system chimed in my ear. Ding. You have killed the targets. Gained 1.2 trillion EXP, 12,000 hero skill points, and 110 billion contribution points. Ding. You triggered 10,000 times amplification. Ding. You plundered the Divine Kingdom, gaining 300 small divine power crystals. Ding. You triggered 10,000 times amplification, gaining 3 million small divine power crystals. System notifications continue. Ding. You have killed the targets. Gain 900 billion EXP, 9,000 hero skill points, and 760 billion contribution points. I was stunned. The Furnace of Destruction's power was absurd, instantly clearing the health bars of numerous gods. The furnace's causal law ensured total erasure. No phylactery or river Styx could resurrect those it killed. After the slaughter, the flame giant dissipated. Using the immortal grade artifact cost half of my 5 quadrillion crystal reserves, but killing 38 gods, a feat impossible in my past life, was well worth the price. I approached the site of the gods' demise. Their bodies had been completely obliterated by divine power. Only a pile of colorful loot remained. I began collecting, triggering 10,000 times amplification repeatedly. My inventory overflowed with high-tier rewards. As the top deities of the lost continent, their loot was legendary. To my surprise, the amplification applied to the loot, vastly upgrading even the immortal-grade gear. The power gap between immortal-grade tiers is immense. The God of Lich's signature weapon appeared not as a staff, but as a cold iron chain that wrapped around the arm. With over 40 pieces of immortal-grade gear, a rarity even Stephanie lacked, I realized most were bound to specific divinities and divine offices, unusable until I ascended. I turned my attention to the Creator God's envoy loot. The Creator God's Trident, an immortal-grade special weapon that naturally suppresses main plane entities. It grants 3,000% damage against main plane creatures and is part of the Creator God Envoy set. I was intrigued. The weapon provided a massive 30-fold damage increase. The set bonus hinted at even greater power. Obtaining the rest would likely require hunting other envoys. I set it aside and examined a mysterious parchment from outer space. It contained a coordinate. I activated it immediately. A marker appeared on my map. It was located in a different universe, far beyond my current reach. I shelved the task for later. Beyond gear, I had gained countless divine power crystals, godhead fragments, and complete divine offices. The unaligned divine power crystals were perfect for boosting my own power. Complete divine offices were rare. Though I had enough resources to ascend and turn my goddesses into subordinate gods, I refused to rush. I had no desire to be trapped in a divine kingdom playing house. I aimed for the pinnacle of the world, not a sedentary divine life. I considered letting my subordinates ascend instead, though the heart of slaughter remained unrepaired. Fearing delays, I led my troops into the portal. The system announced, entering special map, plus 50% EXP gain, plus 20% secret realm drop rate. After the teleportation, I blinked in confusion. The floating islands buffs were game-breaking, especially the 50% EXP boost. The increased drop rate for secret realms was even more significant, as high-tier units were notoriously difficult to obtain. I surveyed the lush, forest-covered landscape. Having never reached the floating island in my past life, I was unsure if this peaceful scenery was typical. The heroines and goddesses curiously inspected the scene before them. "So this is a floating island," Stephanie whispered. Layla puffed out her chest proudly, explaining that floating islands were created at the dawn of the lost continent to allow life to escape into the outer universe during crises. She looked at me expectantly, hoping for praise, but I only rolled my eyes. Everyone knew this, yet I still patted her head, which Layla enjoyed immensely. I smiled and urged them to move. Exploring the massive floating island number 3 would be time-consuming compared to the Blue Star. My goal was clear: locate the island's core and use the city relocation token to establish my territory. Accessing the island's unique tech tree required capturing the core. As they set out, they encountered a camp of wolf-like humanoids. I used a scout spell. Kobolds. I didn't dwell on their presence and had Sylvia wipe them out. Within 5 minutes, millions were cleared. Vivian spotted a treasure chest, reminding me of the day they first met. The chest was a rare drop from the camp, rumored to hold secrets of the floating island. I opened the camp chest. Triggering the 10,000 times amplification, I obtained the complete map of the floating island. I decided to build an altar for the goddess of luck later. I immediately used the map, unlocking all coordinates. As the first player to discover this hidden map, I was rewarded with 1 million prestige. System notifications flooded in as the map data integrated. I studied the coordinates, deep in thought. This saved significant time, and I now knew my exact position. I was in the southeast, relatively close to the core. Using a scroll of haste, I could reach it in hours. I planned my route, wary of the island's diverse native inhabitants. Species like tidal sea monsters, moon elves, and giants were formidable and long vanished from the lost continent. I hadn't expected them to have relocated to floating island number 3. More concerning were the scattered mechanical race bases I spotted. The mechanical race, Zerg, and demon race were interdimensional invaders. The mechanical race had once tried to plunder the lost continent and secretly infiltrated the Blue Star. Though the Arcane Empire had crushed them millennia ago, I remained cautious. I had Vivian cast Shadow Mist and used a scroll of haste to rush toward the core, ignoring the minor tribes. Hours later, I arrived at the glowing pillar of energy. The core was exposed, much to my relief. I immediately used the Supreme City relocation token. The ground shook as my territory materialized. I had successfully occupied the core and gained supreme authority. The system confirmed the island was an independent plane, granting my territory massive buffs, 5,000% HP and defense for all buildings. Defensive structures gained 5,000% attack and range, powered by the island's system. All troops received 1,000% bonuses to attack, defense, speed, and range. Experience gain, resource production, and extraction speeds were increased by 1,000%. Recruitment caps and speeds were also boosted by 1,000%. I was stunned by the sheer scale of these bonuses. It was clear why the player who held a floating island in my past life became so powerful that even Eve couldn't breach his defenses. These buffs were essentially a cheat code, making a single day of development worth a year for others. However, that player's island was much smaller than my number 3. The power gap was immense. Otherwise, that player would have unified the Blue Star. I browsed the island's interface. It was a mysterious, max-level continent that had drifted into the universe after disconnecting from a larger plane. It spanned 800 trillion grids, with infinite magic potential, but currently no defenses or buildings. Threats included tidal sea monsters, moon elves, and giants. The island functioned like a war fortress, offering advanced technology and 13 types of mythical-grade defensive cannons. These included physical, magical, slowing, and stunning variants. I couldn't build them, yet due to my low control level. Full occupation was required for construction rights. I delegated basic barracks management to Yi Mingzhu. Suddenly, a system warning blared. My occupation of the core had enraged the natives. A coalition of powerful races was forming to besiege my territory. Moon elves, tidal sea monsters, giants, winged elves, Lysa elves, and gnomes were all mobilizing their elite forces. The scale of the attack would be massive. I was amused. I had been worried about the time needed to conquer the island. They were delivering themselves to me. Even if their gods arrived, I was confident in my territory. I wondered if they hadn't heard of my previous monster siege victories. Shaking my head, I ordered my heroes to their defensive posts. Hours later, the vast coalition army appeared on the horizon, led by the moon elves. The coalition forces included beings similar to sun elves, though with slightly paler skin. They were equipped with radiant silver longbows. Nearby stood towering mechanical constructs, piloted by gnomes visible through the viewports. Gnomes and dwarves are the continent's premier engineers. These war machines were their handiwork. Above them hovered winged elves. These winged elves were a graceful elven branch, distinguished by a pair of wings on their backs. Additionally, massive tidal sea monsters stood ready, wielding anchor-like weapons. Their bodies were coated in flowing liquid. My focus, however, was on a group of unassuming, white-haired Lysa elves in worn leather armor. Rumor held that 10 could slay a legendary-grade powerhouse, 1,000 could kill a mythical grade, and a larger force could even threaten an immortal true god. I cast my scout spell, revealing their immense power levels. I was mildly surprised by the scale of the force, but remained unfazed. A moon elf in golden attire stepped forward, declaring that the floating island belonged to them and that humans were too weak to reside there. He warned me to abandon my attempt to seize the island's core and leave immediately. I found the man's effeminate tone ridiculous and was momentarily stunned by their arrogance. Realizing these natives were completely out of touch with the outside world, I sneered, "Idiots." The insult infuriated the moon elf, who ordered his troops to deploy elegant, streamlined siege engines. I scouted them. These moon-pattern siege engines were specialized tools designed to deliver devastating damage to structures. Though the moon elves had lost the struggle for elven dominance, they retained their ancient heritage. These weapons were relics of a bygone era, designed for massive wall damage. To me, however, they were useless. My walls possessed defenses far beyond the main plane, capable of resisting even deities. The coalition launched their assault. Silver projectiles streaked through the air, slamming into the fortifications. Upon impact, the ammunition erupted into brilliant silver light. Only negligible damage values appeared. I scratched my face, bored. My immortal-grade walls, bolstered by the floating island, were impenetrable. The fact that they could even trigger a damage tick was a testament to the weapon's quality. The coalition stared in horror, stunned by the lack of results. This was the Moon Elves' most powerful siege weaponry. If they couldn't even breach the walls, the siege was effectively over. The coalition forces were left in a state of bewildered paralysis. Losing patience, I issued an ultimatum: surrender and become allies, or face enslavement or extinction. The coalition members, many of whom were former hegemons of the Lost Continent, scoffed at the threat. They viewed my territory as insignificant compared to their own past glory. They remained arrogant, underestimating the human leader. Suddenly, a melodic, surprised voice called out from the air. "Human, what is your name?" A female winged elf in emerald armor descended, her wings snowy and soft. "Night Demon," I replied. The winged elf's eyes widened in shock. She bowed deeply. "Meduo, 365th Matriarch of the Winged Elves, submits to your command." A system notification confirmed the request for vassalage. I was surprised my reputation had reached this isolated floating island. Regardless, I accepted. As vassals, I could now command their resources. The winged elves defected to my side. The coalition was stunned by this sudden betrayal. The winged elves were a formidable, highly mobile force. Their submission suggested I was far more terrifying than they had imagined. Doubt and fear began to spread through the coalition ranks. I snapped my fingers, activating my defensive systems. A barrage of energy fire engulfed the coalition forces. System kill notifications flooded the screen, leaving the newly defected winged elves pale with relief at their decision. The bombardment continued for 10 minutes. I had enough resources to sustain this for years. When the smoke cleared, the coalition had vanished, likely having fled through secret means. I checked my map. With the map coordinates, I could track every remaining enemy. "Vivian, Ina, go conquer the Moon Elves and Lysa Elves," I ordered. "Sylvia, eliminate the Tidal Sea monsters, Cyclopes, and gnomes. Offer them slavery or death." The heroines departed immediately. By crushing the strongest races, I intended to cow the rest. Beside me, the winged elf matriarch broke into a cold sweat. With a few words, I had decided the fate of trillions. I confronted the winged elf queen, Meduo, demanding an explanation for her actions. Meduo claimed their ancient texts contained a prophecy. The prophecy foretold that a powerful deity would establish a territory on the floating island and become the world's strongest. I and the goddesses present were skeptical of such prophecies. Upon learning the prophet had been dead for thousands of years, I dismissed the matter. I declared the winged elves my vassals, granting them autonomy to maintain their traditional lifestyle. Meduo expressed gratitude and departed. I, confident in my forces, ignored the minor threat of the elves. Suddenly, several immense auras descended, accompanied by system announcements. World announcement: a top-tier temple has moved into the Night Demon's territory. Attacking the Night Demon is now considered a declaration of war against the deity. World announcement: a top-tier temple has moved into the Night Demon's territory. Attacking the Night Demon is now considered a declaration of war against the deity. World announcement: a top-tier temple has moved into the Night Demon's territory. Attacking the Night Demon is now considered a declaration of war against the deity. The system notifications continued. The goddess's actions caused the floating island to tremble as several magnificent structures materialized within my territory. Stephanie's temple was silver-white, topped with a glowing crescent moon. Layla's temple appeared as a mysterious, pale green phantom. The goddess of death's temple resembled a withered, decaying church that radiated discomfort. Despite the temple's aura, the goddess herself remained endearing. The goddess of space's temple was ethereal, shrouded in transparent, mysterious energy. The goddesses were pleased with their new, high-level temples, previously reserved only for the most devout. They decreed these temples would serve as their personal chambers. Suddenly, another massive power descended, triggering a new system announcement. World announcement: a top-tier temple has moved into the Night Demon's territory. Attacking the Night Demon is now considered a declaration of war against the deity. Players were stunned, wondering how the Night Demon had attracted so many goddesses. They marveled at his ability to connect with such powerful entities. With so many goddesses protecting him, no one dared to attack. Players were particularly shocked by the involvement of the goddess of moonlight, a legendary deity. The concept of deities remained distant to most players, but I and the goddesses were equally confused by the sudden arrival. Layla immediately demanded to know how I had enticed the goddess of moonlight. I insisted I didn't know her. Layla and Stephanie remained skeptical. The goddess of moonlight was an ancient, powerful deity, rivaling the god of light. Known for her erratic behavior despite being in the good faction, I truly had only met her a few times for exchanges. I recalled a past task she gave me, to attack the Dark Goddess's temple. I had abandoned the mission after releasing the God Eater. As moonlight flooded the area, signaling her arrival, I headed toward her temple. I hoped for a reward, having caused significant trouble for the Dark Goddess. Entering the cool, refreshing temple, I observed my surroundings. The interior was lavishly decorated. Blue moonstones glowed softly beneath an artificial crescent moon, and I spotted numerous ethereal, pale-robed figures. These were the goddess's petitioners, mostly humans and some elves. I approached the central statue. The goddess of moonlight stood shrouded in mysterious light, eyes closed. She opened her eyes and stated that the God Eater incident could not be hidden from the major temples. I raised an eyebrow. I suspected she had been involved in the God Eater's origin. I shrugged, asking for her point. She noted that while my current defenses and divine protection made me untouchable by most, I remained vulnerable. She asked if I could resist the Creator God upon their return. I, unfamiliar with the Creator God, asked about their power. She replied that to the Creator God, they were merely like his own troops or heroes. I was shocked. Players usually had absolute control over their units, barring rare rebellions. I questioned the nature of my own cheat if the Creator God held such total control. Silence filled the temple. The goddess of moonlight advised me not to ascend to godhood yet and to continue building my strength. I agreed and asked about the Dark Goddess. She smiled, noting the Dark Goddess had sealed her divine kingdom and was fleeing across the universe. I asked about my reward. She offered to take my hero, Ina, under her tutelage. I agreed, knowing Ina's growth was tied to moonlight and had been lagging behind my other heroes. Since I couldn't fully utilize Stephanie's power, the goddess of moonlight was essential for Ina's development. Leaving the temple, I felt puzzled but decided to focus on securing the floating island. My heroes successfully cleared the area, and I received constant notifications of tribes surrendering. With the strongest tribes defeated, the smaller ones followed suit. I accepted them as vassals, rapidly gaining control over the floating island and deploying my looted resources. I established resource zones protected by immortal-grade walls and defensive installations. These zones, combined with the island's bonuses, promised massive resource yields. I planned to focus on development while my defensive systems came online. With the island's 1000% recruitment bonus and the hourglass of time, my army would grow at an incredible rate. A thunderous system announcement suddenly echoed. World announcement: the Lost Continent is under massive attack. The good faction's defense has collapsed. The Church of Light calls all players to the east to repel the undead. World announcement: a large-scale event begins tomorrow at noon. Head to the nearest Church of Light to participate in the Holy War. Portals will open at noon. World announcement: this event uses a point system. Rewards will be distributed based on participation. Players cheered, though many lamented their heavy losses from the previous underground Holy War. Despite being drained of troops, they saw this as a chance for a comeback. I, however, frowned. In my past life, Iraq's invasion occurred a year after launch. This was far too early. It seems the God Eater's influence is significant. The good faction's gods are distracted, and Iraq is making his move. No matter. He is merely a clown. I decided to attend the event, primarily to raid the event shop. Furthermore, the lair of the red dragon, the last dragon species, was located in the east. However, I had no intention of traveling like an ordinary player. The event required players to form a defensive line against the Undead Legion on a remote island. The location was isolated, taking days to reach even from the nearest nation. Ordinary players would rely on the Church of Light's portals to reach Death Canyon. But I was different. I possessed the Floating Island, a mobile war fortress that traveled at terrifying speeds when fueled by crystals. Moreover, with the island's firepower, I could simply carpet bomb the Undead Legion. I closed my system panel. With the event not starting until tomorrow, I had time to spend with the goddesses. I also needed Taiwanasi to prepare. Iraq was her inner demon. Killing her brother would be a massive step in her growth. In the Lord's Hall, the goddesses were studying the floating island's sand table. Layla excitedly claimed a large portion of the map with a wave of energy. "This area is mine," she boasted, before I flicked her forehead. She had claimed nearly half the island. Layla pouted, calling me a heartless philanderer. I rolled my eyes, recalling my promise that they would live together on the island after the war. I hugged her, smiling. "In the future, your divine kingdom will descend here." The goddesses gasped in shock. Divine kingdoms were special dimensions created by gods, existing outside the main plane. Bringing one to the main plane meant accepting its restrictions and defying the creator god. Even the dark goddess wouldn't dare attempt such a thing. I sneered. "I've already offended the creator god. War is inevitable." The goddesses turned somber. The creator god's power was absolute, having once purged hundreds of gods with ease. The goddess of space shifted the topic, and I agreed. For now, building strength was the priority. The sand table updated in real time as my heroes advanced. Hours later, the system pinged. "System, control of the floating island exceeds 50%. Defensive structures unlocked. System, special buildings unlocked. System, special buildings unlocked." I breathed a sigh of relief. I opened the construction panel and began building. The structures triggered an upgrade to Immortal Grade, as expected. Item, Immortal Grade Defensive Cannon. Description, unknown tech, fires high-energy lasers. Stats, 6.8 m attack, 500 b durability. Skill, Death Ray, insta-kills units below Tier 10. Skill, Cannon Fire, fixed fire damage, 1.5x attack damage per second for 5 minutes. Skill, Hell Decit, Overload Mode, fires 10 lasers per attack. I was satisfied. I produced 1 million cannons. While they looked small against the island's massive scale, a single volley would shake the main plane. Item, Immortal Grade Shield. Effect, 1 energy point negates 100 damage. Item, Immortal Grade Stealth Device. Effect, renders the island invisible even to immortal units. Item, Immortal Grade Engine. Effect, capable of spatial movement. Item, Immortal Grade Research Center. Projects, Shield Reinforcement, Advanced Propulsion, Firepower Research. These were the island's core special buildings. The shield, similar to the Dragon's Soul, would absorb all incoming damage. With my current crystal reserves, the entire lost continent couldn't break my defenses. The stealth device allowed me to drop the island directly onto enemy heads. The thought was delightful. The spatial engine provided mobility without draining the goddess of space's power. The research center was the most vital, especially with the god of ancient technology's logs. It provided a comprehensive upgrade to the island. Satisfied, I closed the panel. I pulled a glowing, rotating cube from my inventory. I installed the immortal artifact from the creator god on my floating island. As the island was enveloped in mysterious power, I felt invincible, confident I could now rival the dark goddess's divine kingdom. I then set my sights on the east. Although the world event hadn't officially begun, I knew it wouldn't follow a rigid game script. I decided to test the floating island's firepower by activating its spatial propulsion system. Ding! Activation will consume 1 million crystals per second. Confirm. Confirm. The engines roared, and the island tore through space at incredible speeds. Within seconds, it arrived above a desolate, dark landscape filled with barren trees and crows. The system prompted me to attack, but I held back. Taiwanasi had been eager to strike at Iraq since the world announcement. leading her troops toward the Death Canyon. She soon arrived on the floating island. Dressed in a red Gothic gown, she had successfully masked her vampiric bloodlust. She gazed around in awe, whispering, "So this is the floating island." To think he actually obtained the creator god's supreme artifact. I rolled my eyes and called out, "Hurry up, or I'll finish off your brother before you get here." Having mastered the magic network, my magical prowess was second only to the goddess of magic. I didn't need skill books. I could manifest any spell at will. Tayawanasi retorted, "He is not my brother," before hurrying to the Lord's hall. Upon entering, she froze. The presence of the goddess of space, Layla, Stephanie, and the goddess of death left her breathless. As a mere demigod, she felt overwhelmed by the true deities. I, wanting to expedite Araka's demise, asked, "How do you want him to die?" Tayawanasi was stunned by my arrogance, though she acknowledged I had the backing to be bold. Her eyes turned blood-red with excitement. "Roast him? Or skin him? Wait, he's a skeleton. Feed him to the dogs." I sighed, sensing her deep hatred, and asked for the reason behind their grudge. I was curious, as Tayawanasi had little screen time in my past life. Her expression darkened, filled with murderous intent. She revealed, "He humiliated and tortured my sisters for centuries before turning them into gargoyles." Everyone frowned. I pressed, "Sisters?" Tayawanasi explained that her family was obscure and the vampire matriarch had exhausted her power creating the three of them. I asked if the matriarch had treated her well. Tayawanasi sneered, "Hardly. She only cared for herself." I understood. In the Lost Continent, relationships were transactional, and the matriarch viewed them as investments. It was clear, however, that Tayawanasi shared a genuine bond with her sisters. "Rest assured," I said, "we will settle this today." Tayawanasi nodded firmly, her eyes glowing. I steered the floating island eastward. I soon spotted the target. Below lay a rotting, pitch-black landscape crawling with an endless undead army. I recognized them instantly. Abominations, gargoyles, and ghouls swarmed the land. Their stats appeared on the island screen. The army ranged from low-level ghouls to legendary death knights. Arak and the death dragons were likely nearby, though not immediately visible. The undead were known for their numbers and infectious nature, but they were useless against me, as I remained untouchable. I ordered an immediate bombardment. Blue light surged as the mythical and immortal grade cannons fired simultaneously. The earth was instantly engulfed in a torrent of energy. System notifications flooded my ears as I triggered the 10,000 times amplification. The kill count soared into the hundreds of millions. In one volley, I wiped out billions of undead, including thousands of legendary and hundreds of thousands of epic bosses. I was satisfied. I had already secured enough activity points to clear out the event shop. Remembering my past life, I noted the event rewards were quite decent. Though they were of little use to me now, I intended to empty the shop anyway. I continued the bombardment, the roar echoing for thousands of kilometers. Deep underground, a pale, cold man stared at his warm map. It was Arak. As a powerful death knight, his body was nothing but white bone and death energy. His soul fire flickered in panic. He had lost half his army in an instant. Even the 9 great temples couldn't have dealt such a blow. "What is this?" he roared in frustration. His subordinates trembled, unable to answer. A black knight finally stammered, "My lord, it might be a floating island." Araka's soul fire shook violently. A floating island. Across the continent, paladins preparing their defenses were stunned by the blinding light in the east. The evil aura has vanished. Perhaps the god of light has intervened. No one else could command such power. Paladins viewed the explosions as divine miracles, but experienced generals and priests frowned. They sensed no divine power in the blasts, which was even more terrifying. It meant the attacker was a mere mortal from the main plane. The elite paladins were stunned that a main plane creature could unleash such destructive power. The explosions drew the attention of many gods. The undead army in the east was merely a pawn for the evil faction. Seeing the good faction distracted by the God Eater, the evil faction seized the opportunity to launch a massive offensive. Yet, a single volley from me inflicted heavy losses on the gods. Damn it! Who is this bastard? My tens of millions of elite troops are wiped out. What is this? a war fortress of the mechanical race. But they were wiped out ages ago. Iraq, you trash. You claimed you'd slaughter the lost continent, but you've lost a third of your army already. I couldn't care less about the gods' reactions. With the floating island's stealth systems and Layla's divine arts, even gods couldn't scan the island's information. As the dust settled, Taiwanasi looked at the electronic screen, seeing the devastated, crater-ridden landscape. The floating island's firepower had blasted bottomless pits into the earth. I decided to avoid shelling the ground in the future out of respect for Gaia. I noted that Iraq was missing and the elite units remained largely untouched. Taiwanasi pointed east. Iraq is a coward. He'll be hiding in the rear of the main force. Let's go. I snapped my fingers, and the floating island surged eastward. Meanwhile, in the stench-filled undead army, Tion Dise, covered in black armor, gripped his sword. He was representing the Dark Goddess to coordinate with Iraq. The Dark Goddess, humiliated by me, sought revenge. With the good faction struggling against the God Eater, she saw her chance. Tion Dise, however, was paralyzed by fear. It's the night demon. Why is he so strong? He gasped, his spirit broken by repeated defeats. Having been easily killed by me multiple times, he was utterly demoralized. His warrior's heart shattered. He now only sought survival, which seemed increasingly unlikely. Iraq's eyes flickered. The night demon. Is he Taiwanasi's consort? A subordinate confirmed. Yes, Demon King. He is definitely linked to Glory's death. Iraq felt heavy. Glory's was no weakling, yet I had toyed with her. He looked at his formation, finding some comfort. He had gathered many powerful entities, including several ancient demon kings. But these powerful allies now looked grim. Damn it, Iraq. You idiot. The enemy is the night demon. Are you brain dead? I just had a clone killed by him. Do you want me to lose more divine power? A mere demigod challenging the night demon? You're insane. The gods didn't wait for a response. Within 2 seconds, they fled, leaving only the demon kings and Tion Dise behind. Iraq, a skeleton, couldn't show expression, but he was stunned. The mere name of the night demon had scared away so many gods. The underground space quickly emptied. A cold breeze chilled Iraq's skeletal frame, filling him with dread. He and Tion Dise exchanged a look, but before they could speak, a profound sense of crisis overwhelmed them. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening roars echoed. The space was engulfed in blinding fire and surging energy. Seconds later, the dust cleared. Iraq was in shambles, his black armor shattered and falling to the ground. Tion Dise was obliterated again. As a player, he would respawn in his territory. Iraq stared in horror. Before him stood countless massive, menacing cannons. Energy still dripped from the muzzles. Iraq's scalp tingled. He couldn't even discern their grade, but they felt at least mythical grade. There were tens of thousands of them. Tens of thousands of mythical grade cannons? He couldn't afford even one. I would have laughed. These were immortal grade, not mythical. Regardless, I didn't care about Iraq's thoughts. A teleportation light descended, and I arrived with Taiwanasi. I studied Iraq, feeling a sense of nostalgia for the enemy I remembered from my past life. Iraq had been a formidable foe, requiring the combined effort of many gods to defeat. I had earned my first legendary unit during that event. Now, however, I chuckled. Iraq was just a demigod. He had no real threats left on the main plane. I yawned and asked Taiwanasi, "How do you want to handle him?" She gritted her teeth. "Don't interfere. I'll do it." I nodded and tossed her several bottles of immortal-grade potions. She drank them without hesitation. Boom. A thick, blood-red aura erupted from her small frame. Iraq watched in terror. He knew Taiwanasi well, but she was now burning her own blood, a desperate, high-cost ultimate move. Her aura now far exceeded his, rivaling that of the gods. Who was this man? I stepped back to watch the show. I wasn't worried about the outcome. With the potions and my support, if Taiwanasi couldn't win, she was hopeless. Minutes later, the battle reached a fever pitch. Iraq was retreating, cursing his luck. His strength lay in numbers. But his undead army was being wiped out by my forces the moment they appeared. Taiwanasi swung her blood-red scythe, sending Iraq flying like a broken kite. Bored by the Death Knight's resilience, I checked my inventory for a scrap of paper I'd received after building a wonder. It contained coordinates to the Eastern Canyon, a location I couldn't ignore. My eyes glinted. I recalled that the Red Dragon's lair was also in the east. With the Red Dragon's recruitment permission, I would complete my collection and gain the right to establish the ancient Dragon Empire. I urged Taiwanasi to finish the fight. Suddenly, a mysterious aura descended. Layla, the goddess of phantoms, had possessed Taiwanasi. Ignoring Taiwanasi, Layla sneered at Arak. "Prepare to die, Arak." I twitched, wondering if the two goddesses were merging. Arak was terrified. With a god's descent, Taiwanasi's power now far eclipsed his own. Even worse, the countless demon kings behind him, including his father, remained silent.